All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of the Good Flight Podcast. It's me, Paul Nurkkala, and my co-host, John Graham. John, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. It's another great day over here in Pennsylvania.
And tonight we are joined by an illustrious guest. I have been getting to know Mr. Donovan Davis here and there over the last, 6 months at this point. And I'm really glad to have met him because, in the intervening time that we've known each other, kind of working on a project that we can't talk about yet, unfortunately. I've gotten to hear a lot of stories from him, a lot of stories that I think would be great to have as part of the Good Flight podcast. So I decided to ask him to join us. So thanks very much for coming to hang out tonight, Mr. Donovan.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for that very uncharacteristically tender introduction.
Tender? I was going for loving and honoring, but tender is good too.
I mean, yeah, that works.
How do people normally introduce you?
It depends on the event. This is a guy that flies drones, or he's a nerd, or this guy knows more about drones than anything else. Blah blah blah.
You're on the Good Flight podcast. It's those two things are a given, that you're a nerd and you fly drones.
Yeah,
it's
proven. Question is the you just wait, John. Is the name of the podcast, The Good Flight, is that a play on the good fight, like fighting the good fight?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, that's what
I
thought.
John's idea originally, and I had thought we had decided on that, and then we started episode 1, and I was like, "Welcome to the Good Flight podcast," and John's like, "Is that what we decided to call it?" That wasn't my favorite one. I'm like, "Well, too bad," because I thought it was so great, because it gives that sense of what's happening, what's going on. It adds to the conversation a little bit. It's not like let's talk about drones. No, it's like, let's talk about the stories. Let's talk about what's going on behind the scenes. So
yeah, I wanted to call it Droning on Droning. I don't know why. My friend came up with that, and I just fell in love with it. But you know what? I got the Good Flight tattoo. It's healing up. I'll show you guys on the next one.
Really?
Okay. I also got the tattoo. John said we all had to have the tattoo. No, you don't.
Yeah, I totally missed that memo.
Oh.
But you know what? I say the Good Flight after a lot of times, like almost, especially on stressful flights. When we land, that drone hits the H, their little helipad. Good flight. You just whether it was good or bad, it's like it's on the ground and it's in a safe spot, and we got the shot, and it's fantastic. So,
and on that note. So Donovan, I met through basically a connection with DJI, and Donovan is so much more than that. And like with anyone in this industry, there's obviously a huge history of having flown drones and the process to get into drones and stuff like that. So I would love to rewind the clock on you, Mr. Donovan, and kind of hear about what is your drone story? Where did you get started? Where have you been? Where are you going?
Sure. How far back do we want to go? To the very beginning, childhood, or do you
go to that first memory where where you thought this you could be playing with.
Yeah, we got to fill at least an hour and a half here. So
wow, what a rare opportunity to have long form pontification on my part. Okay, cool. Well,
it's that therapy money we're talking about, right,
yeah.
Nurk?
It was spring 1978. A little freckled boy was born. No, not going to go that far back. So my dad, when I was 7, bought a control line Cox gas-powered model airplane. And if you're not in your 40s, you may not know what that is, but it's a plane on a rope, which they still have today. And it had a little gas-powered engine, and you had to put it together. and then it had like a kite string, and you would spin the front propeller, and the engine would actually like turn on and start firing, and then you would just like go around in a circle and wait for the gas to run out, and then you would land. Like, and
literally
I was so
line
amazed.
of sight, right? Like literally the line of
Yes,
sight scenario.
literally plane on a rope. Yeah,
I didn't
or
realize
like
there
plane on
were-
a kite string.
I didn't realize there are gas-powered control lines. Like, you have to wait for it to run out of gas at that point, right? Is there some sort of choke where you can cut the motor, or is it just go?
On the upgraded models, you know, if you were really into the hobby, then there was an additional control line that could control throttle. So you could actually, you know, increase and decrease throttle, and you could lower the throttle all the way down and land. But on the model that I had, you just started it up and flew it till the gas ran out.
There's
So
guys
maybe
still
that was
running
just-
these. I think they're going like 100 plus miles an hour now or faster,
Yeah.
right? Some of the
Yeah.
I'm
modern
getting dizzy thinking
rigs.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually, if you
FPV camera on that?
YouTube this or Google it, you'll see that there's actually still like, you know, world competitions for
Yeah.
control line flying.
Yeah.
And the guys, there's like 3 guys that are right next to each other in like the center of the flying field, and they're all spinning with their control line like pressed against each other. I highly recommend that you.
Is it a
that you
race at
Google
that
it.
point, or
It is, yeah. It's like a
so
race.
how do you make
yeah.
a pass? Like, do you have to like give your competitor like a hug and like pass it around them or something? Like,
Under or over the arms.
I'm not really sure how that works, but you know, if somebody wants to chime in
and then
on the official
follow-up
rules.
question: does
Yeah.
anyone fly control line FPV? Right, so it's a double factor, right? Because you have to wear the goggles and see from the perspective, and spin your body, but keep the plane in the air. Oh god!
You're always looking to be the first, aren't you, Nurk?
I
Always.
mean, if you ain't first, you're last. So you got a control line, gas-powered plane when you were 7, you said?
Yeah, when I was 7, and then what I remember is my dad flew it first because he was like, you know, trying to be responsible and didn't want me to like, you know, fly it into my face, which is probably a good idea. But he crashed it immediately, and then just like pieces everywhere, and then like the little motor, gas powered motor, like shot off into a bush, and it was this whole thing. But then we got all the parts, and he felt so bad about it that he ended up replacing it later on with like my first RC helicopter, and that like when everything changed for me, and it was like magical. It was the most magical thing that I had ever done, where I could actually control this thing remotely that could fly. You know, it was the only thing I can liken it to is when I was actually in flight school, like getting my pilot's license. The first time I flew a helicopter and like took the doors off and, you know, flew an actual helicopter. That's how I felt when I was 7 or 8 years old with that helicopter, just being blown away with this idea that I could remotely control something that could fly.
That's very cool.
So then I just fell in love. And at that point, so this is like, God, what is this? So this is like late 80s, and it was still an extremely expensive hobby. The helicopter that he got for me obviously wasn't super expensive, but just learning to fly it, like every crash would be like saving money, you know, for months until you could buy the parts that you needed.
The
and
frames
then, you know,
destroyed, cracked.
Everything would just fall apart because, like, you know, they're all like single rotor, you know, collective. There's so much going on in there, and it's all super fragile. And so when you crashed, it was devastating, you know, so because you knew it was going to be like months and like do extra chores and like, and then you'd have to go to the hobby shop and annoy the guy at the hobby shop, asking him how to fix it. And could you borrow his little micro tools?
You'd have to order
it was a whole thing.
You'd have to wait for it to ship. And
Yep.
There was no Amazon back then.
Nope.
Plus, you didn't even know. I had a similar story and getting early involved with helicopters, and a lot of times you'd rebuild like the swash plate or something, and not even know if like you did it right, and then you'd spin up the RPMs, and it wasn't, and then it'd crash again before you even took off. I mean, we've had those drone experiences too with FPV, or at least I have. But man, I remember that.
100%. Yeah, I would be lying if I said that I never cried at an airfield after that exact thing happened, and knowing as I'm watching it, you know, disintegrate on the flight pad that it's going to be months before I even get to try to fly it again.
What do you think that taught you, like back in the day? Like it was like resilience and patience. Like what are some other things that come to mind, that maybe that you still call on to this day, in your work?
Don't crash is what it taught me, because crashing sucks. That's definitely the life lesson that I have learned over and over again as a commercial drone pilot.
Not worth
Don't crash. It's not worth it if you can avoid it.
I regularly encourage people to crash. I don't know, like in interviews all the time, like I tell people don't be afraid to crash. But I guess my version of commercial drone pilot is very different, I suppose.
But yeah, I mean, I crash every day now, testing various prototypes and whatnot, especially in the FPV hobby. Except a catastrophic crash now is I have to spend, an hour replacing a frame. And typically it's like a prop maybe or two. And so there's never been a better time to get into this hobby than now, because it is, I mean, just a couple of years ago, the quad build, for a Cinewhip or whatever, it wasn't even a Cinewhip then, but that would have taken a day or two. Once I was, that was my job, putting drones together and flying them. It was still a process, and programming a flight controller and micro soldering and all this stuff. And now, like the builds that you did a couple of weeks ago, that Cinewhip build was like 2 hours or something?
Yeah, I
from
can
scratch.
Like if I use like a stack that accepts the DJI plug for the FPV air unit, it's 14 solder joints, and it takes me less than an hour to build a full drone.
Right.
Like I have to slow down to film it. Like
yeah. And that's the thing, like, if you're not crashing, you're not learning, like I totally agree with that. But the consequences and your ability to continue learning are obviously much less now than they were back in the day. So that led
that's
to,
one of the reasons why I love, that's one of the reasons why I love FPV. It's almost like, because there are such high consequences to crashing commercially, you do not want to crash on set, period.
Mm-hmm.
End of story. Unless you're like going in there to crash. There's always that maniac. You hear a story like, well, I was told to crash. Okay, good job. But you do not crash on set.
It's that fail fast mentality, right? Like it's like a tech startup almost. Like it's, go push as hard as you can, and then you're going to be able to pivot and start again. Like I'm on board, honestly. Just
you're on board with the crashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. But that's what I love about FPV, because it lowers the bar. You don't have to cry about it. You can just like pick it back up and hopefully change a prop.
And if you're that worried about it, you get on a sim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about, the barrier of entry being a lot lower too. It's not just the hardware and the the physical drones that are easier to build. It's also easier to find these things. There's lots of ready to fly drones at 6S rippers that are going 100 miles an hour and stuff. And
with a stock Betaflight tune is just like, okay, it's taken all of the challenge out of it.
Do you think that it's going to be growing in that regard, or is getting simpler and like even more so? Or
yeah, I think the future of FPV and drones in general is that everything will get easier, faster, simpler, because while there are those of us who are so nerdy that we really enjoy the build and the tune and really getting into that, there's only so many Nurks and Josh Bardwells in the world. And for everybody else, it's really about the joy of flights and the ease of being able to do that and learn about that. That's where most people's excitement is. I also happen to be in the nerd category, where I really love building, and I love digging into every little aspect of it and understanding how this version of Betaflight is different than the last one, and how changing this parameter is going to change my flight characteristics. Like, I love all that stuff, but what I see the evolution of it is that stuff will become less and less necessary. And so we're almost there, honestly, already. Like Paul said, you can default tune in Betaflight, your quad that you just built, and it actually flies, which is, that's a huge step, because there would always be these moments where you're like, you're getting light and you're raising the throttle stick and you're just like, come on, just get in the air. And a lot of times it wouldn't, or it would flip out or whatever. And it's not necessarily that you had props on backwards or you had some huge screw up. It was just still in its infancy. So yes, I think absolutely it's going to be something where the build gets much, much simpler. Like we were just saying, with not that I'm plugging DJI, but with the DJI Air unit, that honestly, just having that micro plug so that I don't have to micro solder to the board, like that's an hour build savings right there.
Yeah.
And if something goes wrong, I can see exactly where it is. If a wire pulls out or whatever, like it's an amazing time to get into the hobby. So for those of us that want to tinker, you can still do that. But if you just want to go fly and have a great time and not spend a bunch of time in your garage or your office rebuilding and tweaking, that's where the industry's going for sure.
What do you think are the consequences of having less people have to suffer? Asked
Well,
another
one
way.
consequence.
You didn't have to suffer to do that Matty flip.
But like having less people working on making it easier, right, is going to slow down the progression potentially, or
right.
like what kind of potential consequences, or I mean, even like, so if it hasn't become clear yet, Donovan is what is your role with DJI? If you could describe it describe it in like 20 words.
So I am the senior product specialist, which basically just means that I know everything about every DJI product ever made. That's my job. And to train people, everybody from sales to pro users to assistant tech for our partners and tech support people for specific projects, like the way that Paul and I met. Same thing with Josh and a lot of other people in the hobby circles. I'm the sort of main point of contact for all those people when it comes to tech stuff. And then I also, for all of our internal projects that require flying, I function as the pilot to fly all of those internal projects. But my main function is development of new products and new platforms. So that's the really fun part.
So
it sounds all fun, honestly.
With that perspective,
I mean, it's like anything else.
With that perspective, you've seen evolution of products, especially from like a consumer-facing industry or market, like what DJI is going after. The simplicity being driven down for the purpose of being able to fly more easily. What consequences have you seen as a result of faster and faster progression of
easier
ease of use,
access,
of
lower barrier to entry?
Yeah, I mean, this podcast is about pro droning, right? So we're obviously I have my own thoughts about the industry and the barrier to entry factor and all that. But I think at this point, honestly, like the consequence right now is people spend a lot more time flying and a lot less time fixing, honestly. So, and that's on the consumer side. These products are designed to just be plug and play and let's go get it done. Let's get the picture taken. Let's get the video shot. Let's fly this thing. The negative consequence, I think, could be that if you're not, if you don't have to delve into all of the moving parts and understand the way that a system really works, that for some people, maybe they wouldn't have the opportunity to really learn the intricacies of a UAS system that might lead to inspiration in the future or thinking about a solution for a product. Because if you don't understand the way that the sausage is made, you can't really ever make a better sausage, right? Unless you're really lucky. So I think that could be a consequence, that people don't, because they don't have to learn all of the nuts and bolts, that future innovation may slow a bit. But I also think that people that really love that stuff, like me and Paul, are going to kind of find a way to get into the nuts and bolts. There's a picture of me that I was trying to find for this, my grandmother's tile floor when I'm like 4 years old, where I've taken her phone completely apart, and there's pieces everywhere. I probably didn't put it back together, but that's me. That's just how my mind works, and it always has. I've always been really into computers and understanding like what's inside that and how does that work. And so I think that those people are going to find their way to that. So I don't know that it would necessarily negatively impact the development and the evolution of drones in general, but I do think that there's a certain level of expertise, especially for professional drone pilots, where you don't ever completely trust your gear. You don't really let yourself get overconfident. Like there's stuff that crazy directors and DPs are yelling in our faces, literally, to try to force us to do. And I could say that, the primary skill of a commercial drone pilot is like, an airline pilot. You never can lose your cool. You just can't, no matter what happens. And so, being that I came up through the invention of brushless motors into these more advanced flight controllers and gimbal systems, and I understand how they all work and what the possible problems are going to be, I think that just makes me a safer pilot. And in maybe some people would say too cautious. I have heard that criticism before, but I would definitely rather be that than the opposite of that. So, yeah.
Well, it's amazing how comfortable people get when around drones very quickly. Some people that have never seen big drones before, drones in general, as soon as after a first successful flight, if our job is to make it look easy, and when we do, they get complacent very, very quickly. So those safety parameters that you just talked about in your safety meeting are almost just, people just forget about it. So you have to your credit, Donovan, it's like you have to remind yourself, but not only that, the people on the crew, that these are dangerous machines and they can hurt you. So respect them
100%.
Essentially. So
you do that safety meeting, at the start of the day, and everybody's in awe, especially the size drones that we're flying. They're terrifying looking, and they have these huge props, and it's just this very scary looking machine, and it is, it could potentially do some damage. But at that first part of the day, everybody's being very cautious, and they're watching it in the air as they were instructed. But then, lunch rolls around, and there's people on their phones that are walking into the LZ. I had a person who, other than my BO, whose job it was just to keep people from walking into the LZ, that we had cordoned off, with cones. But by halfway through the day, they've gotten used to the sound. It's no longer a terrifying thing, and you have people that try to walk right into the props. So that was always more nerve-wracking for me than, trying to get this crazy shot that the DP or the director wanted. Was like, how do I keep everybody safe? And knock on wood, I've never had an incident where anybody got hurt, but there's have been a lot of them out there, and I think that maybe I kind of sound geriatric here, but the respect of the machine and understanding that it is not a toy. Like we say that, and I was a grip for 15 years, a Dolly grip for 15 years before I was a drone pilot, and I hear, like, when I say that in my safety meeting, there's always like a little scoffing or a little chuckling under somebody's breath, right. Because they're the grips, for example, they're dealing with cranes and heavy equipment and all this stuff that's super dangerous and boom lifts and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so then they look at this this big piece of plastic and they're like, yeah, sure, we're terrified of this, but a healthy amount of fear is a good thing.
They might own a drone themselves or something like that.
Oh God, yeah. How many times do you have that guy walk up to you on a set, and you're flying Alta X, you're flying some huge, ridiculous, GD40 or like some massive, terrifying drone. The guy's like, oh yeah, I fly drones. You're like, oh great, nice man. What do you got? It's like, oh, I got this parrot that I got from Sharper Image.
It doesn't work right now. It's not working, but
it's not working right now.
See, but this is now how I feel about people like you guys that fly like stabilized mode and all this stuff. You don't fly drones.
Hey, wait. You don't get to just throw me in the non-FPV category. Okay?
No, you both fly FPV, but I.
Oh, good question.
Yeah. Well, we can't all be world champions, dude. So it's like, you know what I mean?
We all can. You only need to be world champion once,
this is true. Yeah.
Actually, so
at something, not necessarily drones.
Let's come back.
How many Academy Award projects have you worked on, Paul?
A couple. Yeah.
What were they?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Anyway, so John, as far as professional drone piloting goes,
Academy Awards,
it is definitely a challenge, to maintain that safety on set, and people do get complacent and comfortable for sure.
Before I forget, I've been toying around.
Set this right here.
What is that? It looks like it belongs to an actual plane.
That's my 28 DRL Allianz World Championship.
It is shiny. We polish that every day.
God.
No, not once.
That is badass trophy. That's really,
it weighs
really
like 25 pounds. It really is an airplane propeller.
John, did you notice that was just out of frame? Like maybe that was staged there.
Well, it was there
for this exact purpose.
Somebody came and did an interview a few weeks back at the house. and they wanted it in the shot, and it was up here actually, but I haven't taken it back to its normal resting place.
Well, I want it in the shot too, so I'm glad it's in there right now.
It is a very impressive trophy, and we're very proud. I actually have a question for Paul. Is it cool to call you Paul, or you prefer Nurk, or like what do I call you when we're being recorded?
They're interchangeable. Okay. I hear my name when anybody says one or the other.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question, and I want the God's honest truth answer.
Okay.
Not that I'm putting you on the spot. How many times did you fly that train shot?
Once.
Before you actually got it.
It was the only time, right? Because like if the train goes by, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like you can see the beginning and the end of the train in the same shot. Like
no, that's not what I mean. I mean, how many times did you go out there and practice with trains passing by before you shot that?
It was the first take.
That was the first time. 8
witnesses that can attest to that. Yep.
You landed inside one of the boxcars.
I did not land inside the boxcar
and flew out the door.
Yeah.
No,
first try.
You did power loops through the bridge. Scaffolding.
Yeah.
You got next to the engineer, who looked really pissed off, by the way, when he closed his window.
Great timing. Great comedic timing.
It was fantastic.
The graffiti, that's the first time. Like fly by. Oh, a little sweet tag there.
I was hoping for a wave, you know.
As impressed I am with the World Championship, I am more impressed that you only did that one time. That blows me away.
Paul always talks about like a higher level of like thinking, and I always, whenever he talks about that, that's what he wanted this podcast to be about. But when he talks about it, I just stare at him because I don't have a lot of higher level of thinking going on. You know?
Yeah.
Imagine seeing Paul's brain neurons firing like as he's doing that flight, because the reaction times that you needed, you're probably like perfect amount of like adrenaline, perfect amount of like focus to not beef it there and just like fly. You flew.
Well, and that's what I love about it so much, like as a video. And I think why it was as successful as it was is it kind of told a story, right? Like it was, originally when I took off for that flight, I was never intending to fly around the train. That's the other part. That like I was going to go fly in the mountains and do like mountain diving. And my friend Andy is his name. It's not Andy Shen, a different Andy. Tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, there's a train coming." And then like in the video, you see the drone go and like make a decision between like flying in the mountains and going down to the train. The video, like it starts just going down to the train and then all of that stuff. But like as it was happening, like part of the reason, like it was not a smooth flight. Like it was like bobbing up and down. Like it was terrible. But half of that was because we were just laughing our asses off. Like, holy crap, that worked. Like, what's going on? Like, okay, now what can we do? And I was like, go under it. Okay, now go over it. Now power loop it. It's just like, it just kept escalating. But like that story of audio. Like, what can we do now? That's what.
Oh my God, I would pay to have the audio from that of just the two of them like screaming high pitched. The biggest compliment I can give about that video is that I was looking for where you hid the cut.
Nope.
Like the first time I watched it, I was going like, there is no way that this guy actually flew this. This is insane. Like it's impossible. Like that's how good that was. And it's to this day. I mean, I don't know that anybody will ever top that as far as dynamic freestyle, like object-based dynamic freestyle. I don't know anybody will ever top that video in my heart.
That. Did you know that I got fined from the FAA for that flight?
Nice.
I absolutely believe that you did. Was it the big one, the $10,000 fine?
I walked them back from that a little bit.
Okay.
But
so were you not in uncontrolled airspace? Like what?
No, I wasn't. It's Class G airspace. If you go look, it's there.
Okay.
What the FAA said was that because I was operating under FPV, I did not meet the 336 exemption for hobbyist.
Line of sight hobbyist, right?
Which, if you ask the AMA, they say one thing. If you ask the FAA, they say one thing. And so basically the FAA said, nope, you are operating as a commercial drone operator because you're using FPV and a visual observer. And because of that, we're going after you for all of these things, including that at that time I did not have my Part 107, right? Because I was just flying as a hobbyist, right? I wasn't trying to make money on that flight. I was just like going out. And so they said, your first mistake was operating without a license, and then and they just layered on like operating over top of something, all that stuff. So
oh my God, wow. So I mean, worth it though.
Damn. I was wondering why you got your Recurrent like a little bit late. I was like, you just got your Recurrent for your Part 107. I was like, it's June, dude.
Yeah. It was.
If you got it when it first came out, I believe you're probably Recurrent in like October.
Yeah, I got it as for DRL actually.
Yeah,
originally.
Sick.
Mine, I was the first person to take the 107 test in California.
Whoa. Wow.
And like was at the door when the FSDO opened that day to go in and file the paperwork. Nice. And at that time, if you had a 61, if you had a private pilot's license, you could like pre-take it and then just go in and bring the paperwork in and they would give you your 107. Nice. So I did that. And when I went to do my Recurrent, which was 2 years later, they actually gave me a new license with my same pilot license number on the license.
Oh, that's cool.
And after that, they just started giving out paper Recurrents because they, I guess, probably realized they didn't want to reprint all of these plastic licenses for all of the 107 guys.
Yeah, so I had to order another plastic, but now I just have a piece of paper.
Yeah, I had to order another. Yeah, because it says expires on it. So then none of the producers you're like, well, it's expired. Like, well, no, I got the paper with the stamp. It's embossed. And so I was just like, I'm just gonna pay to get it.
They actually like give you grief about that because in LA, all the producers know that it's paper. Like when I bring out my still unexpired now second time renewed plastic one, they're like, no, the paper. Where's the paper? And I'm like, no, it says right here. It's still good.
I guess.
Till
it's
August of 2020.
Yeah. Most of the time, I don't even get asked for it. They're just like, "You commercial pilot?" Yes.
Yeah.
Well, in Los Angeles, the fire department, those guys have their own paperwork. So they have a fire safety officer that's required to come out on every set when you're on a set with a drone. So, and he is usually the one that's going to check your pilot's license or your certificate, I should say. Your 107 certificate to make sure that it's valid in you. The funny thing is, a lot of times they'll check it and doesn't have a picture on it. And then I'll say like, oh, here's my driver's license, so you can see that that's me. So because they're like very adamant about making sure you have the license, but I could also just be anybody, and saying like, yeah, here it is. But
Jimmy, let me borrow your Part 107. I got to shoot tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm sure that probably has happened, but yeah. So anyway, not to go too far off into that tangent, but I just wanted to know the story behind that. And now that I know that you got fined for it, that you suffered for it, it's even more outlaw awesome.
Yeah, it is.
I am not proud of the video because of that. Like, right, that kind of took away from it a little bit. But in the years since,
I think it adds to it. I mean, I like to follow the rules and all, but
I don't bring up the fine to brag. Let's put it that way. But the thing that I am most proud of from that video now is that, in the years since, I've had thousands of people come up to me and be like, I started flying FPV because of that. To me, like, that is the lasting legacy that I want to carry in FPV. And so because of that, I have, like, there was a time where I felt like very genuine shame over that. And I've kind of come full circle on that and I'm just so glad that it has had a positive impact despite, the way it was received by the government.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I'm never like forced to be a part of any tech support or whatever. And so, like, when your name came up, for example, and they asked me, and I was like, I knew who you were because of that video. And I was like, oh, absolutely. I'd love to work with this guy, nice. And God knows how many other connections that you've made, because it's legit. Like, if I see an FPV flight and I'm like, I could not have flown that, I mean, like that respect level, just being like, this is somebody that has put in their time, that this machine is like an extension of their body. And that's when it gets really impressive, and it borders on an art form. Somebody that is inside that drone and can make it move as fast as, John brought up their synapse is firing.
Yeah.
And that just completely blew me away. And I'm sure it did for a lot of other people too. So, FAA at that time, they were enforcing based on likes on YouTube and, views.
100%.
And so I'm sure you very quickly got, under that radar because of how popular that video was.
I had some good conversations with the FAA through that process. Like, I got on the phone a couple times with different regional reps, as well as, like, I think I talked to number 3 or 4 at the FAA. So I would love to hear a little bit about your commercial experience. So, like, right now you're currently working, in this role as staff at DJI, kind of working through all of the new products and training that people in them and all that stuff. But you've cut your teeth in the commercial industry, flying on sets, and you worked as a dolly grip. You said, I'd love to hear a little bit about your history and some of the good flight stories that have brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, I definitely have some good flight stories. We also may have to rename the podcast to Terrifying Nightmare. Not sure how that's going to work, but I'm also gonna I'm gonna be honest about what it's like to be a commercial drone pilot. Is what I'm saying, and so that hopefully the benefit of somebody watching this is not just us pontificating, but actually something useful, so people understand what it's actually like what the day to day is. So for me, it was I was always into RC from when I was little, and then I got into 3D single rotor stuff in my late teens, and that was like the end all be all for me. I absolutely loved that. Just being able to make this helicopter move like a dragonfly or a hummingbird was like the ultimate thing for me. And then I moved to LA specifically to get into the film business because that was my other love. I was making movies with my parents' VHS camcorder from 7-8 years old. So
VHS, that's like a CD-ROM, right?
Yes, it's like a CD-ROM that you shove into a box, and then it gets stuck, and you have to take 2 butter knives and pry it out. So that's old shaming for anybody keeping score. That's too old shaming. Okay. So when I came to get in the film business, I had actually worked on some independent films as a camera operator, and I was always really into photography. But I didn't really know anybody, and to get on the union shows, whenever you need to be in the union, you need to know somebody. I didn't really know a lot of that stuff, so I had family that were grips and were able to kind of help me figure out how to be a grip and how to be good at a job and not just show up for a paycheck. But essentially, my 2 loves, which was flight and film, it was the drone work is the perfect fusion of those 2 things. And my original plan was I wanted to be a movie helicopter pilot.
Sick.
And that's why I went to flight school and,
just straight up north over here trying to.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, that's a great goal to still aspire to. I mean, you never know.
It's a fantastic goal. Absolutely. What I did find out though, is that is a very tightly locked up a part of the industry. And there are some incredibly good pilots that have either military backgrounds or come from families that have done it and are multiple generations. Like a lot of things in the film business are generational. But what it came down to was really I had to let go of that because I was just never going to have the amount of stick time that a lot of these guys had. I was never going to have just thousands of hours with these machines. And as much as I love the idea of doing it,
in the Air Force and go fly for 20 years.
Right. Exactly. No, definitely wasn't going to do that. And so,
that you started in the film industry in LA?
I moved to LA in 2000, in March of 2000, and it took me 4 years to get into the union. So I actually I did a lot of independent stuff, and I DP'd stuff and I cam opped on stuff, and I would be back at that point. It still kind of is like this today. You just do whatever you can to make the relationships that you can. But the benefit of that was that I got to learn all of these different aspects of film, of what each department did and how a set worked and all of that. And I just kind of fell in love with that. So I had planned on working in film, for a year or two, and then 15 years went by, and that, as sometimes happens, and being behind the dolly, because I had experience as a camera operator. And for those people that don't know what a dolly grip does, essentially the dolly is like a small metal platform vehicle that usually has wheels that can move a camera in all directions on all axes. So you'd have a camera operator and a first AC or a focus puller on this vehicle, and then the person that's actually pushing it, making it move, raising the boom arm up and down. That's what the dolly grip's doing. So that
as a football player was perfect. You're basically just tackling the dolly over and over again.
Yeah, there are those days that as a dolly grip are very physical days where you're laying a couple hundred feet of dolly track and some a horrible place. It's a swamp or something, and you're having to crib everything. And then, it takes you plus two other guys that from your crew that you roped in to help you push this, because again, sometimes it could have 3 people on it and, 120-pound camera system.
What's a Dolly Track for those what is a Dolly Track for people that don't know as well? It's like
so Dolly Track. It's like railroad track. So when you're doing tracking shots, typically to get those smooth Hollywood tracking shots that a lot are done now a lot with drones, actually, you would have to put removable, placeable track that folded out in scissor sections, and you would clamp them together for however long of a run you needed, and then put the dolly up on top of that, and you would have to level it using wood cribbing, and it was a very involved process that dolly grips. It really is like an art form after a while, being able to look at the run that the DP wants or the director wants and say, like, okay, how am I going to do this? I can see there's holes there and there's a rise here. And, it really was amazing. And I was lucky enough to be around really, really amazing dolly grips that have been doing it for a long, long time.
Still doing
and just
it
watching
today,
and learn from
right?
them. And still doing it today, 100%. Yeah. And so I was able to kind of get into doing that, which I didn't really so much know how to do. And so through the kindness of a lot of dolly grips and through family members, I was able to kind of figure that out. But the more delicate part of that is when you're not on dolly track, and you're on dance floor, or you're on a smooth floor on a stage or at a location, and there's very subtle, very precise movement that goes into a lot of camera moves. And you see that a lot more in modern film and TV, where the camera movement is very subtle and very precise. And so if you looked behind the camera on a lot of those shots in episodic TV or film, where the camera's slowly coming around for a moment where you want to see the expression on an actor's face, or that is being done by one guy, the dolly grip behind there, who's operating a boom arm with his left hand. He's operating another controller with his right hand. He's using his hip to kind of push the dolly around. So it is the ultimate multitasking, and very similar to flying drones. So that the experience was paramount in me understanding the way that a camera moves, and that the timing of a camera and the speed of the camera can influence a lot of the way that a scene feels. And so if you don't have that experience, and this I guess goes back to that question about the possible drawbacks of people not having to kind of go through all the stages, is that if you don't do that, if you don't, then you may not understand, have the benefit of, oh, I need to slow down here. Even though the DP is telling me faster, faster, or lower, lower, actually, I know that, this shot is coming out of a scene that was very, slow, or very quiet, or very emotional, or at the end of this is going to lead into that, or this is to establish this location, or this is to exit this scene. Like, understanding all of those things, I had the benefit of that because I had been a dolly grip for so long, and I was able to just turn the drone into a dolly. And even the way that I communicate with cinematographers and directors on sets is the drone is a dolly. And it's because I realized early on that doing that and communicating in that way was a language that they could very easily understand. So if you're on a set with me, you'll hear the DP or the director say, okay, now, dolly left, boom up, boom down, push in, pull out. I mean, they're just giving traditional camera directions. And that's the part where I feel like if you really want to be a professional cinema drone pilot, you really need to understand and watch a lot of film and watch a lot of episodic TV, understand the terms that are used, and more specifically, just how important that movement is in terms of actually being a part of telling that story properly. And that's like with Cinewhoop stuff, there's the speed, like it's not always just go as fast as you can to get to those locations. So much of it is about, of course I'm talking to the Yoda of Cinewhoops about this, but there's so much of it that is just about, like, if I come up and I'm arcing around at the same time, no sweat, Boba Fett. If I come in and I'm arcing around, how do I time it so that the boom is the right speed, then it matches the speed that I'm coming around? Like, all of that is instinct, yes, but also it's experience, like knowing, like, I have this shot in my head that I saw somewhere in a movie, in a film or whatever, and I'm kind of fitting this moment into that template, right? And I feel like that is really what separates somebody who can fly drones really well from really being an aerial cinematographer or really being a pro drone pilot, is that you should bring with you more to the set than just I can take direction and move a drone from point A to point B. Like that's what made me really valuable and really successful as a cinema drone pilot was I got to the set and I would see, previs, I would talk to the director and the DP, the first AD, as soon as I got to the set to figure out what we were doing. Hopefully I had gotten some kind of previs or storyboards or something. And that would allow me to know what scene I was coming out of or what shot I was coming out of and back into. Yeah. So that experience is just about, I can offer more. And so now that I've got your shot, Mr. DP or Mr. Director, now that I have what has been boarded for you, what about this? Like, have you guys thought about maybe this shot? And half the time, especially on commercial shoots and feature film stuff, they end up using those shots, because understanding that you have more to offer actually gives you that respect. It gives you that value, and then you get called again and again because it's not just, oh, I told the drone guy to fly over there and shoot the car. And it's like, wow, we didn't even realize that we could get this shot.
Yeah.
He came up under the bridge and came around just in time to get that lens flare as the sun was setting. That's the stuff that they see on the cutting room, in the cutting room or in the editor or in the last cut. That's actually when you get the next job, is when they see.
Yeah, that's when you get the callback.
Yeah, 100%. Like the end of the day when everybody's doing it.
We were describing the other day, being on set with drones is as much sales as it is operating, right? It's like, this is why you've brought this in and why we're trying to do it. And you play that balance. You don't want to be so pushy that you're interfering with the DP's vision or something like that. But also at the same time, let's work together to create the best product that we can. And especially when, you have something that can do everything, like it's, how do we make sure that, we're adding to the story. We're not just making gratuitous drone footage for the sake of it being, which I'm all about. Like, I love gratuitous drone footage, but you gotta find that balance.
There's no better way to sell the shot than to show them the shot. So getting, listening to them and getting that shot as close as you interpreted the first time is important. But it's also important, what we've learned, is to always be shooting. So in that time you're resetting and the drone's going back to one, a good camera operator is always framing up a shot and always, and they have that relationship with the pilot, so everything's always kind of smooth. And oftentimes on the way back, you can give them a little bit of an alternate, maybe a lower altitude look at something. Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, it depends on the director. Some directors can be very strict about if you're rolling on something or not after they yell cut, and if you're still rolling, you're in trouble. But a lot of times, even with that case, they see something on the monitor that they love as you're resetting, and they go, "Are you guys rolling on that?" And if you're not, you click record. Yes, sir. We are right now. Absolutely. And then you can open up that dialogue about these alternative angles that we can work in and stuff like that. You put those little seeds out there. That's what's fun.
Yeah, John. I mean, how many times have you been coming into land? And it's it's just a live feed, and the director's like, "Oh, that's incredible! Right there, did you guys get that?" And you're like, "Go ahead and roll it," and then you fly back and do it again. That happens all the time, where the drone's just sitting on the ground.
Yes,
looking between landing gear, and they're like, roll on that. That's incredible. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That low angle shot is amazing. There was one show we were on, and we had this low angle shot of a car setup or something, and there was the A camera was in our shot, and they had the A camera move out of the way so we could get the shot that the drone was sitting on the ground. And I was just like, oh boy, sorry guys, I didn't,
The A cam is something on a Russian arm on another,
it's the A camera. It's the number one camera operator. It's the guy. It's or girl, and that they're the camera. Drone is oftentimes is not a
dirty word.
Never a camera. It's a lot of times they don't even remember what camera. So in movies they're using multiple cameras every day, so they name them by letters, and it's not uncommon for some shows to have 10 cameras on a shoot. Primarily they might use the A through C or A and B camera, but drone, half the time they don't even know what to call you, and they just tell you to go letter Z or something. So that's where
I always try to fight for D cam just because it's drone. So if they say oh, we don't care, I'm like, cool, it's D, drone. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
I did want to say when Paul was saying it's this magic, it's this magic thing that can do anything. I've had, this I call it the magic camera orb misconception, And this is because, especially early on, like when we were first like starting to build these larger XH and stuff like that, commercial directors were like the bane of my existence because they literally thought of it that way. It was like, oh, this camera can go anywhere, it can do anything.
Yep.
I actually had a director ask me to fly through a wave,
Nice.
boy.
and this is
Wait,
yeah,
like
this
through
is
the barrel or just like straight through a
like through the barrel as
boy.
this wave is collapsing. And by the way, these are Southern California waves. These are not like Hawaii waves or you know
even so
like
though
big waves. Exactly. And so I'm saying like I thought he was kidding. And I actually remember laughing a little bit when he asked me, like, can you fly through this wave? And I said, like, oh yeah, sure, I can fly through the wave. And then he looked at me and he was like, well, what's the problem? And I said, seriously? He's like, yeah, just you're just gonna come around and you'll see the surfers, and then I just want you to just fly through. And then I had to actually say, like, especially at this point, because basically a drone was just an open motherboard, with booms and PSCs, motors, and props. I had to say, like, well, it's essentially a computer with propellers. So, if I fly through the wave, what do you think's going to happen? And he said, oh, it would be a great shot. And I said, okay. And I'm flying like Alexa Mini, like Cook S4s, like I'm flying a pretty expensive camera package. And so I said, well, I could do it once.
So a $80,000 camera package on the bottom of the drone.
And then if you have a scuba diver, maybe, you can go in and recover the footage. Anyway, so that conception has permeated my entire career as a drone pilot. It's like you go out and you do things that are impressive, and maybe it's good enough on that shoot, and maybe you'll get the attaboys and the handshakes. But the next time you go out and you work for that same director or that same DP or sometimes even that same
now
producer,
you got to one up it.
Now you got to top it. Yep. Now you got to go faster. Now you got to be more impressive. So, the advice I'm giving is do a good job, but always have a little something maybe you're holding back in your back pocket for that next time, that next moment we're going to try to create a great shot, because they will literally try to get you to do anything. And me saying like, oh, the DP screaming in your face or the director screaming in your face, that's not a saying. That's real. Like, that's what we go through. Is that kind of like, oh, that you were so close to the car, why didn't you oh, because I would have chopped that guy's arm off, or I would have hit the windshield, or but those moments, that's one of the toughest things about being a professional drone pilot, is that traditionally on film sets, the director and the DP, they are God. They are the people that decide how the shoot is going to go, and when they tell a crew member to do something, they do it, right?
Yeah.
So now you're this gatekeeper between them and this new technology.
Oftentimes the new guy, that's your day player that you show up and they've been working already together for, 2 months or whatever.
Absolutely. Like everybody else is tight knit. And then here you are, the drone guy. And the dirty little secret of the Hollywood drone business that a lot of people don't talk about is that there's really like a dozen pilots that do almost all of the work. So I'm giving you guys the secret information here that John is already aware of. And different companies, essentially the companies that are right, but he knows what I'm talking about. So we all the companies that have been successful and are still around from the 333 days realized early on that they needed to have these relationships, these friendships, these moments where you're not always going to be booked solid, but there's going to be times when you're double booked or triple booked or whatever, right? So we all kind of like make the rounds, and work on for different companies, whatever. Obviously I'm not going to name any names, but this is the way that it actually works in the industry. Is A team is booked. There's B team, there's C team, there's D team, and that can be, I'm working for John's company one day, he's working for mine the next day, and that's has been my experience from the get-go, is that, and how I made some of my best friendships in the business was when somebody was double booked or triple booked, and I would go out with their camera operator or their tech, or, we do, because the multiple drone shoots where they do happen from time to time, they're incredibly rare. So it's rare that you actually get to hang out with other pro pilots and professionally, like you meet them at the airfield doing testing, or if they happen to fly FPV or whatever. But our ability to like learn from each other didn't usually happen very often, because we're not hardly ever on the same set at the same time. Yeah. So I would say, especially for camera operators too, John brought up an interesting point. You're always operating, right? Like you operate all the way down to the ground is what my favorite camera operator would always say about it. Like you're always finding a shot, and whether you're rolling or not, you're looking, how can I create value? How can I find a great shot? That's what separates the true professional, like really talented camera operators from people that are panning and tilting. And that's ability to compose, the ability to work with the drone and understand how the drone's moving. A lot of that has to do with the pilot and the camera operator in a two-man setup, like synchronizing and just having experience together. But a lot of it is just that, like if I'm trying to do a compound like parallax shot, there's a specific timing that I need to get for that to actually have the best version of that shot, right? So if I'm panning too fast, whether I'm countering the drone or I'm going with the drone or whatever, it's not going to give me that perfect parallax, right? So that's all about experience from the camera operator and the pilot working together. And then sometimes when you're single opping and you have to do that stuff by yourself, it's always incredibly challenging. And you really, I spent most of my time as a pilot, even though I was also 600 camera operator, I would usually be the pilot and have a pro camera operator with me. And my favorites, the guys that I would hire over and over and over again, were the guys that when the camera was sitting on the ground, they were operating and looking and seeing where the light was coming from and really creating that extra value that, as John pointed out, there's always somebody looking at a monitor, and so if you're finding a way to maximize your value, that's going to get you the call back for sure.
How, for our listeners, like how do people get good at finding those moments? How do you, like, what can we be doing to recognize when we should speak up and say this is an opportunity for a shot, and how do we get better at practicing that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, watch any car commercial is definitely one way to do it, because typically what they're using in the car commercials that are broadcast is going to be the best version of the drone shot. Not always. Sadly, like some of my absolute favorite shots I've ever done didn't get used. And of course, as John can tell you, and probably too, Paul, I'm not sure how commercial you get in your commercial stuff, but you often don't have access to the shots that you shoot. Like somebody will come and grab the card as soon as, especially if it's on something like Marvel or something that's really high profile. You never get to see what you shoot other than that moment on the monitor when you shot it. And it can be heartbreaking.
Especially if you're the pilot and your eyes on the drone, a lot of times you haven't even seen a frame, and you just have to trust your camera operator to you have to trust them and the reactions of everybody as well. So that's one of the things I learned as a camera operator. I do a bit of both. I do about half camera operating, half piloting, and I love my experiences both. And don't make me choose. We've already talked about this, but it's like I've learned to tell as a camera operator. I love to communicate. I think that's one of my strengths, and I'm not saying it's necessary, but I really like constantly giving a constant feedback loop to my pilot, so they can just focus, so they don't have to wonder if the shot's bad or if they don't have to wonder if the shot's good. So if the shot's good, looking good, this is great. Keep this up a little bit faster. Okay, now we're in the money. Like, it's like kind of this dialogue that I try to carry on. And not only does it serve the pilot benefit of hearing that reinforcement, I think, or hearing that feedback, I think it also serves twofold, because the director's in your left ear, and they're telling you instruction. So by repeating that information, or whether it's good or bad, you're confirming that you're communicating that with the guy or girl ultimately flying the drone. So it's like, that's important as well. I think it all helps pull in the communication effort. That's the most difficult part of the job for me, is managing that communication. Literally, like you said, not always screaming, but sometimes it is, and you have to know how to handle that situation as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, say that it's always a nightmare, because the majority of the time it isn't. But I would say higher than people think are those really aggro jobs, because obviously, especially in the commercial world, which is most of the drone world for me. I'm not sure how that was for you guys, but I would say 70% of what I've done has been commercials. And then the other 30% split between episodic TV, music videos, and feature film stuff. But especially in commercials, it's not like they can just add a day easily if something goes wrong or they don't get their shots. Like, there's a lot of pressure in the commercial world. So I always try to kind of cut the DP some slack and the director some slack, and kind of understand that, we usually come in for some reason on the last day of shooting. It's always where they schedule the drone. And so, we come in
running out of light.
Everybody's tired. They've been going hard for the last couple of days. And then here you are, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, going like, hey, what drone shots can we get?
What's up, guys?
Like, this is the most important shot. This is the opening shot and the closing shot.
Exactly. And half the time it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And that's for feature film too and episodic TV. Like, what are they going to open with? Oh, that drone establishing shot. And what are they going to close with? Oh, that pull away shot. Okay, cool. So I'm bookending, the start and the finish of this. But yeah, so there is always a lot of pressure. There's always a lot of stress, and it's really important to try not to take it personally, and just to maintain your composure. I don't really know how I would advise somebody to practice that, other than like when you're flying, have your friends like scream in your face randomly.
Yeah, take a phone call.
Yeah, exactly. And like John said, like I have the production radio, right, and I have that in an earbud, and then I have the ear tech headset on that, so I can talk to my crew. So you're like, you're doing all of this, and already flying. Drone piloting is the epitome of multitasking by itself.
Yeah.
And then if you're the pilot who's running the crew, which in my experience, it typically is the pilot that is communicating with cam op, which is dealing with production, whatever. There's crews that work the opposite way, where the cam op kind of runs everything, because traditionally that's how it's worked in the film business. Like it's always the cam operator that is told what to do, and then they kind of disseminate that down into the rest of the crew. But for me, it was always more efficient, maybe just because I'm more of a control freak, for me to kind of figure out what to do and then communicate with the cam op and the TAC and director and DP, and then kind of make a plan there. And what John said about constant updates, like that is very important, especially if you have not worked together with a cam op a lot. But in my experience, most cam operators and pilots really benefit from that kind of constant communication. And that's why like that we all kind of make fun of the ear techs. But the main benefit of the ear tech is
I look for every freaking excuse to get those things out, because they are so much fun.
Yeah, the benefit of the ear techs, you can just shit talk about anybody and no one can hear you because you can just whisper into them. Ear techs are a headset that we wear. It's a brand, but they're actually a pretty affordable brand compared to what some of the other people use in the business.
It's a walkie-talkie that you wear.
It's $600. You can go on Amazon and you can get these sweet like wireless comms that communication headsets. It's
one of those things that you, until you have them and you're using them, you don't realize like how freaking useful it is. But like you can just have conversational sponsorship.
Instead of being like like Billy, like grab me that extra bat. Like you don't want to be yelling stuff at all. That's important. So if you want to act like, never let them see you sweat, act like you know what you're doing, make it look
John,
easy.
Can you give me another beer?
You want a beer?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And then without even, exactly. I got you.
Well, no, I mean, that's very true. I mean, the main benefit, other than being able to shit talk when you have particularly difficult, people giving you directions, is that it's a closed communication between you and your crew. Like every so often, if it's a specific shot, I have extra ear techs that I can give out to a director or DP, but I'm never giving out more than one, because I only want one person.
The rule of our crew.
Yeah.
It's like, never.
Right.
And then if you have to tape it, you say it's like no good. They're like, it's broken. Yeah, it doesn't work.
I will only give it to the one guy that like I'm cool with, like where they're like it's the guy that you have the relationship with or whatever, like that kind of gets it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that is, like John said, you don't want to be the only person on the set who's screaming, or having to yell directions or whatever, because the rest of the crew is
especially when there's a drone in the air,
right? And then you have that extra noise of the prop wash and the blades cutting through the air and all that, especially on the big drones.
Explosions for the shot.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. We have an explosion story upcoming, so stay tuned for that. But I mean, it's little things like that make a massive difference. Like if I can be focused on my monitor, I'm also having to obviously keep the drone in line of sight, but if I'm focused on my monitor, knowing that I can just, with a normal tone of voice, communicate with the cam op and say, okay, so I'm going to come around, and then right when the car pops out, we're going to have you tilt down. Like just being able to do that is so valuable, right? Because I don't ever want to hear somebody scream unless there's a reason for them to scream. You know what I mean? Like anybody like with any sort of volume that's like, even like I John, and you've probably had this experience too, where you get to that zen place that we need to be for a lot of these like close quarters, lower, faster shots, and you get it and you nail it and you're like, you feel it, and like just that the force is strong with you that day.
Oh yeah.
and then the director or DP or producer will slap you on the back and say, "Great job!" It's so jarring, like when that moment happens, because you were just in your Zen place, you were just in your happy place to get that shot. So yeah, highly recommend wireless communication between a crew, especially if you're like a typical 3-man crew or 4-man crew. It's going to make you guys look way more professional, and honestly, it's just super beneficial for everybody involved to be able to communicate that way.
Affiliate link in the description below.
Yeah, perfect.
I mean, they're not sponsoring this video, but they should be sponsoring this video because in the end, what they did that was genius was they made this technology affordable, right? And you can't fault them for that, because prior to EarTech, you were looking at a couple of grand minimum, to get something that would work.
Yeah.
And that's also one of the really beneficial things about drone technology, that it's brought all of these other lower cost options into the industry that we never would have had. I mean, look at the Movi Pro. Look at the way that gimbal is used. Look at the Ronin 2, the Ronin S series. Like all of these different products that are not specifically drone products never would have come to fruition if it wasn't for being made to work specifically with those platforms.
The Ronin 2 is an absolute legend. The Ronin 2 is so sick. It's as far as capability of like a professional tool on set, I think the Ronin 2 rivals a DJI drone as much, because it could be used all the time. It could be used on a dolly. It could, you could put it on a tripod and have it as a remote head. It's an amazing tool, and it's incredibly tough.
I mean, I was going to say thank you, but I actually didn't make the Ronin 2. But I do agree. That it's fantastic. And what really
especially coming off the Ronin 1 as well, which was not very good.
Yeah, the Ronin what? No, I think we just immediately released the 2.
Ronin.
Right? There was never a public release of anything called a Ronin.
Ronin was not good, and then the Ronin 2 came out, and it was just like the best.
So here's the interesting thing about the Ronin 2 is that it's now 2 years old, 2.5 maybe.
Yeah.
Right. And in the pro cinema world, people don't even start trusting a product until it's been out for at least a year and it's been put through its paces, kind of had the crap beat out of it. And so Ronin 2 actually was kind of slow in catching on originally. And it was probably because of the experiences that people had with the original Ronin, which was very early on in that technology.
And also compared to the Movi Pro and the Movi XL, which are just out there crushing it. And now would be a good time to maybe just say, you're not here speaking on behalf of DJI, you're speaking on behalf of yourself, right? So
exactly.
We're not talking about the Movi, the free fly products, it's just, we're just talking about the industry. We're not trying to represent DJI or anything, just FYI.
In case anyone misconstrues it, though I do work for DJI, I am not here on behalf of DJI. But I am here as a commercial drone pilot, and I'm going to tell the truth. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about future product releases or anything like that has to do with DJI. So sorry you got clickbaited into that. But really, it's just about, I'm going to give you the what? I'm just going to give you the my honest opinion about products that I'm very intimately familiar with. And there are things that the Movi Pro does better than the Ronin 2.
Whoa.
And vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. We can dive into that a little bit. I mean, the Movi Pro is incredibly lightweight. It's so light. When you after a big job, when you're using the Movi Pro, which is what we use most often, by the way, because it is light, you disassemble the Alexa Mini with the big lens, and this rig could weigh 20 pounds all up, which basically you're attaching a 20-pound payload with a video transmitter on the bottom to your drone. And after you disassemble that, I think the Movi Pro is only 8 pounds or something, or maybe less. And it's so light, carbon fiber, and it's doing so much, and it looks really good. So it's an incredible tool still.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I personally own 2 of them. And mainly it was about, especially when we were still trying to adhere to, these weight standards, I couldn't figure out a way to legally fly a Ronin 2 in the beginning, with the big camera package on it. So the Movi was ideal for that.
And that's because of the 55-pound limit.
FAA law.
Yeah,
limit.
In the United
Which,
States.
Hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here, but from what I've been told, because, I have worked with all the original 333 companies, and I was the chief pilot at PictureVision. I don't know if I told you that, Paul, but one of the original 333 exemption holders. And from what I learned while I was there, the 55-pound weight limit thing was just kind of like, let's throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. Like when the original stuff was written, right? Like there wasn't really a specific reason why it was 55 pounds. So they just thought like, well, let's see if they'll go for this, right?
That sounds like most FAA decision.
God darn it.
Yeah. So imagine if they had said 100 pounds, like how different things would have been over the last 5 years, right? Like
we'd all be flying GD40s.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And
with Ronin 2s.
Wait, I actually don't know
with Ronin 2s.
A GD40 is that drone that we talked about in the Max's interview, episode 3 or something, where it's a huge Griffin Dynamics drone. It's got 8 motors, 8 props, and it's like the Cadillac of drones. It's all right. I know you don't watch these podcasts over once we record them, so you probably don't even remember our conversation.
Didn't you guys show a picture of this in Max's?
Max's video, pictures.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
We'll show a picture here.
Uh-huh. Anyway, so
I actually listened to the Max one, while I was driving, but I wasn't watching it.
Anyway. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, you were watching while you were driving again. So yeah, imagine if
I'm glad you watched these, Donovan.
Imagine if we had got 100-pound all-up weight limit, right? And how different the pro drone world would have looked, just based on the fact that we're always trying to get just a little more technology in and stay, we're like looking at every gram that's going in on a drone. So I can say that if, it had been 100 pounds, that you would have seen some really impressive DJI heavy lift stuff, but because there was just no way to ever do that and pack enough technology into it, it ended up not being worth doing. And Tab, luckily, thank God, at FreeFly, he's so cinema focused that he's innovating and creating these amazing products. And I will 100% give a shout out, even though I work for DJI, to Tab and to FreeFly, because they are in a niche, and like what you guys were talking about with Max, like he's found an area where he can be super valuable and where there's definitely a need for the kind of products that he makes. And FreeFly is really smart in how they did that too. Like they found this niche that they knew they were going to be able to do this better than anybody else, right? And so like Alta X is, it's this gigantic, terrifying drone, and it flies like an Inspire 2. Like it is incredible.
It flies like a race drone, let me tell you.
Like it is. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I didn't go out and put it in acro, but yeah,
you
I
should.
Watched
it's great.
What did it drop like 25 feet on the barrel roll, maybe?
Well, we should have bumped the rates up a little bit, but it was a little sketchy. Yeah.
I remember slightly puckering watching the video.
Oh my God, we were all shitting.
Yeah, every pro cinema pilot that's flying those things, they're like, I remember watching that, just be like, Jesus, oh my God.
Yeah.
It made me feel better though that it was built on scrap parts and all that stuff.
Yeah. Did you hear about that? So they made it like really seem like it was like an off the shelf like Alta, but it was really like all like prototype test parts that were set aside.
A ripper
that Daniel pulled together. So I was like, yes.
Oh, this was a Daniel Frankenstein version of the Alta X.
It was legitimately an Alta X, like stock. Like everything exactly the same, but like when we started flying it, Daniel's like, it would suck if you crashed it, but we're not gonna get angry. Like that's the pressure was off us, which I think made for some really cool footage. But yeah, it was like
that's the attitude. That's the attitude you want to have when you're test piloting something like 100%. That. Yeah,
when you're at the flying field, they gained some useful information from that too, because like we were sending it.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, nobody wants to crash, obviously, but like John said, on a pro set, you cannot crash. Okay, fine, you're the exception. And maybe as there's more like commercial FPV work, which seems to be like on the rise right now for sure.
Yes.
Crashing more will be more acceptable. But what I can tell you is that in my experience, it was never an option. And you'd have people trying to give you. Trying to get you to do like very close quarters, very fast, very low stuff, and always way too far away. And this is kind of what I was talking about before, is you're the gatekeeper of safety. You're the person who ultimately is going to be responsible for what happens with that drone. And thank God for me, I never had an on-set crash. I had plenty at the airfield testing, but I never had an on-set crash. I never had any injuries. But that mainly was because I knew what my threshold was, and I was never going to go past it. And so there's some DPs and directors out there in the industry, I'm sure, that would say like, oh, that guy was way too timid. Like, he could have pushed it, blah, 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 right? But at the end of the day, that's why my drones never hurt anybody. I've never crashed. And my reputation as a responsible pilot is more important to me than being like the guy that got that kick-ass shot, right?
Yeah.
I want to be both, but if I have to choose, I'm going to choose being the guy who's level-headed and responsible and cares more about people's safety than he does about getting a shot. And I think the industry as a whole, including the producers who are going to be calling you back to hire you again, that's their main priority too.
Yep.
So figuring out safe ways to do things that look super dangerous, that's really what we're doing most of the time. Like trying to figure out ways to create excitement, dynamic
We're
movement.
basically trapeze artists.
Yeah, it's the magic show.
Yeah, 100% with The Greatest Showman. Which have you guys talked about that shot on any of these podcasts yet? Okay, which one? So I can go back and watch it.
That's all we talk about on this show. Actually, I was watching the new Space Force show.
I saw the pilot the other day.
What's his face? They bring up the movie The Greatest Showman. Not they kind of diss it in the show, but I was just like, hey, John worked on that. I was like, this is a great
movie.
There you go. Yeah, I remember seeing that shot and thinking like that is the most impressive handoff.
It's a like DJI inspired too, right?
Yep. Yeah, of course. And that's been the workhorse. Like I'd say 80% of what I've done has been inspired too. Like that was like the Inspire one.
Wait, say that again. Can you say that again from the script? I cut you off.
That the shot in The Greatest Showman was truly amazing, and John is really handsome.
I'm just waiting for my daughter to grow old enough to start watching the show. Okay, so I'm in my basement. There's my stairs right there. We have a Greatest Showman poster right there. And every time we walk up the stairs, I say, where's Hugh Jackman? And she points to Hugh Jackman right there. And she goes, Hugh Jackman. She's only 2. So I just want her to be a fan of it. That's all.
Nice.
I'm like flashing forward to like the first time she brings home a boy, and they're like going to sit down on the couch and watch a movie together. John's going to come out and be like, hey, how you doing? You guys ever seen The Greatest Showman? Yeah, here. Let me just
oh my gosh.
And he sits down with them on the same couch.
I'm waiting to have Dexter Kennedy on. He's like my right hand man. We have some stories from that day. Yeah. So
Dexter and I spoke a lot last year while you guys were trying to figure out Master Wheels and Inspire 2 because that function was never actually released as a public firmware because we didn't have 100% confidence in it working all the time. Not that we don't have confidence in the Inspire 2, but
it was the firmware compatibilities and just little glitches and stuff
exactly,
like that.
Which Dexter definitely is well familiar with now. I mean, we figured out workarounds for all that stuff, but that was definitely like trying to work with any kind of beta stuff, and you're trying to support, especially on the pro side, because you know that if somebody takes a piece of gear out to a set and it doesn't function perfectly, that they don't care why, it just makes that person look really bad. So I'm always very cautious about like any kind of beta firmware or anything that people are using on the pro side, because unless if it was ready, we would have released it. So that when you're using any kind of beta stuff, there's a reason why it's still in beta.
And it's kind of your your baby, having worked on that cinema side, the pro side, and like if you didn't trust it, why would you allow someone else to play with it and not trust it them? And actually that brings up an interesting point. Like what now that we've talked about BFD systems with their big boys, Alta and Freefly and all of their pro products. I mean, DJI makes some pro products, but like what kind of like percentages are we talking about between like DJI's consumer ideas and their pro ideas, and like what where is the attention?
Where's the line too?
Yeah, what is DJI focused on, and what are from your unique perspective as someone that's kind of testing all the new products that are coming out?
That's a good question. It's honestly a little tough because for just straight binary reasons, there's just a lot less users on the pro side. There's just a lot less money available on the pro side. So
there's less money on the pro side, even when we're talking about
way less. Yeah,
$10,000 Matrice and DJI Inspire packages and Ronin 2s and
our Inspire package costs like over $25,000 for like a set ready Inspire package, including like a backup, and that's just for the drone.
Exactly.
Seems like good margin to me.
It's a great margin, but when you're dealing with mass production scale stuff and stuff that is even a little over my head as far as how manufacturing works on the China side and all that, what it really comes down to is that the entire pro market, from what I can tell, is like less than 1% of total revenue. So you're talking about
the entire pro side.
The entire pro side
you estimate as less than 1%.
1%. Yeah.
All DJI revenue.
Yep. So the fact that DJI is still even making pro-focused products really is a credit to DJI that they're still willing to continue doing this, because it's valuable in that we learn from the pro side how to make really good consumer products, right? And what I mean by that is, if it wasn't for the Ronin, as much fun as we all had with that gimbal, there would be no Osmo Pocket, right? There would be what we learned through innovating through those challenges and dealing with, honestly, the most demanding and the most difficult people in the world, which is the professionals, right? Like, we all wanted just to work and work great. Yep, people like John. But that's also what's pushing the limits and has pushed the limits of technology up to this point, right? So I am constantly advocating for the pro side, because that's where my heart is, that's where my home is, and at the end of the day, I just want new pro products that I get to play with.
Yeah.
So I'm always pushing for that, but it's really tough from a business perspective, because, again, like these are guesses on my part. Like, I don't have access to DJI's financials; it's not a publicly held company, so nobody really knows. But I can tell you from my perspective, my guess is that it's a labor of love at this point, that we're even still, focused on pro. Where the line is drawn, like you mentioned, Matrice, for example. Internally, the Matrice is an industrial product. It's an enterprise or a commercial product, right? So even though those are very expensive, if you look at, what else is available commercially, those aren't really that expensive. But that doesn't make its way into the spreadsheet that says, look how much money we're making from the pro side, right? So if you're only looking at the binary aspects of it, you're only looking at the numbers, then you're making so much more money on the consumer side. You're making so why would you focus manufacturing resources and manpower resources and R&D resources
marketing
on marketing and all those things? So like the FPV stuff, for example, Paul, we kind of talked about this before, is the FPV stuff was never about, in my opinion, making money. It was about the fact that Frank loves FPV. Frank Wang, the CEO of DJI, if you're not familiar with him, he just really loves the hobby. And so that's why this amazing product that now I'm ruined for analog and I can never go back to.
Never.
That's why this exists, because he's a fanboy himself, right? And that's so much of what's gone into, I think, making DJI a successful company, is that it's run by a bunch of fanboys. It's run by people that really think this stuff is cool and fun and want to be a part of making it work. So I think they do a lot of projections scientifically. They have focus groups. They have all of the same information that everybody else has. And I'm sure at the end of the day, it wasn't like, oh, look at the huge profit margin we're going to make on this FPV stuff. That they knew they weren't going to, but thank God there was enough love there. There was enough passion there from Frank that it ended up getting actually made and released.
Yeah, and I mean, you've told me that story before, and that to me resonated so much, just with like the fact that like a company that it is as large as DJI and is putting out as many products as they are, can still be driven by passion and by something that they're just excited about in that moment. For me as a hobbyist and as a professional, on both ends of that, like that makes me so excited, and like that makes me just as like I've been accused of shilling DJI here and there, and I'm fine with that because I love the product, but to know that it exists because someone, especially the CEO, just said, hey, it'd be cool if we did this, basically, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit more decision in there at the end, because I can't see that they're making a huge amount of money on the maybe 10,000 people that fly FPV with a DJI
right.
FPV system, but the fact that it made it all the way there speaks volumes to me that that not just DJI but like companies like DJI are excited about just producing something because it could be good, and that's
Mhm.
that that gives me hope and it gives me excitement. And so thank you for sharing that story. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I feel too. I mean, that's why I work with DJI, because for me, like, I love flying on set. I love being a commercial drone pilot. It's my favorite thing in the world. But as I was running my company, I realized that I was spending more and more time in the shop figuring out ways to integrate video transmitters and how to make the system lighter and how to tune it better. And I really just loved that so much that I realized that I was spending more time, way more time, doing that than I was flying, and that I was enjoying that much more. Like, if you look at it, generally, like, oh, which is going to be more fun and exciting, being on these film sets and doing all the stuff? Yeah,
Yeah,
it is
you'd
absolutely super
assume.
exciting.
Great snacks.
You would think that, like, that's the thing, right? And that's where everybody wants to be, especially the new guys coming in. Like, that's
Yeah.
and everybody's starry-eyed about that. But I mean, I was on film sets for 15 years before I was on film sets as a drone pilot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yes, the magic doesn't ever completely go away, but there's a point where I was like, I'm on set flying, and I really want to get back and test the video transmitter,
Yeah.
see if I can get a little more range out of it. I want to see, if I mix 900 megahertz and 2.4, like, can I get that video to go as far as I can, get the control link to go?
Yeah.
So once I realized that, like, that's where I was really enjoying my time, that's what made the decision for me to go to DJI, because I had come in as a test pilot for them years before that, and made those relationships like this in the Phantom 2 days with if you guys even remember this, the original H3 2D 2-axis
Yeah.
stabilized that kind of changed everything. That really,
Zenmuse.
like, revolutionized everything. Yep, the Zenmuse, exactly. So I came in then as a test pilot, and I was still like, just because I was a fan, I like knew a guy that I met at the airfield who knew another guy who actually knew somebody that worked at DJI. So, like, he just brought me into their office one day, and I was like, I'm in Toyland, like, I'm at the North Pole, it's like how that completely.
The North Pole.
Because I had been building my own helicopters for so many years, and I had been putting DSLRs on, and I was running like 700 size and all this stuff on a single rotor to try to create these shots, and spending like months and months and years doing that. And at the end of the day, I would maybe find like a 10-second pocket of smooth air on a single rotor where I could actually get like a pro looking shot, right? And like that was the culmination of like a month's worth of work to be able to get that 10 seconds, right? So being able to actually go to this company that had created a way to do this, like, I was so impressed, even with that early gimbal tech, just how stable it was on this little quad Phantom,
Yeah.
like, just how impressed I was with that. That's what actually brought me to DJI. And then I ended up test flying the S1000, S900. If you go back to this day, you can go back to the S900 product video, and you'll see me flying cliff.
Whoa,
badass! That was the spreading legs, right? Wasn't that
spreading wings?
Oh, right,
wings. Okay. In my OG blue DJI T-shirt, which is no longer a brand color, by the way. And yeah, so they just kind of went from there, and then I went off and did movies and did a bunch of stuff, and then I just decided that I wanted to be a part of advocating for these products to make sure that this continued to happen, because I don't think people realize that even in these big companies, the passion of just a few people can really make a difference in what products are continue to be supported and what products continue to be made. And the love that comes from the community also has a huge impact on whether a company will continue to invest resources and time and manpower into a product. So like the FPV stuff, like Frank, just because he loves FPV, like he didn't need to release a product for that. He already had, the most amazing FPV stuff. I don't even know what he probably has technology-wise, just his personal collection. I would love to know. But it could have just been like, yeah, well, I got my awesome HD video transmitter. I can fly mine, or I can give them out to my friends. But to actually take the next step to say, like, nope, I want this to actually be part of the community. I want this to be part of the world, because we figured out a better way to do this. I mean, people can believe me or not, but I really don't think it was about money. I think it was about passion.
And to put something out that works so well, like out of the box too, like the first time, is like classic DJI. And you were talking about, like, when your original flight testing days with the Phantom 2, I mean, that was right before an explosion of innovation from DJI. For a little bit, I thought drones were going to kind of be like the cell phone market, where every year a new drone comes out, and certainly there have been that steady release from the Phantom series and the Mavic series and stuff like that in the consumer ends, and it makes total sense because it's like a feature driven market, and a little feature could mean a lot of big sales. Anyway, for me, it wasn't until like the Inspire 1 came out, which unlocked a huge amount of creativity from me. Getting that nice stable shot, being able to achieve these like dual operator scenario shots by just a single pilot was something that really was fascinating to me. But then
I want a dual op Mavic so bad.
Yeah, you can.
Like
you can do it. You can dual op
yeah,
Mavic
but
too.
it doesn't. You can't get the 360.
Well, you get a little bit of pan, I think,
anyway.
stuff like that. But I guess one of my questions was, things have kind of slowed down a little bit. The Inspire 2 has been out for like 2.5 years. I don't see of any Inspire 3 on the horizon, maybe, that you're certainly not going to tell us about. But, as this is how I make a living, this is what the products that I deal with every day. So when you start to see the progression slow down a little bit, you start to wonder, is this going to, and DJI is notorious about this. As soon as a new product comes out, they kind of they don't update any firmwares on it. And you wonder if it's going to become obsolete. And since they are flying computers, just stop working, so.
Yeah.
I do want to jump in at DJI's defense really quick and just say the amount of feedback or like support that we've gotten for the FPV system alone has been mind blowing to me. Right. So we've got like the smart controller stuff, the like just even like scaling size of the analog input. Like there's no fucking reason for them to do that, right? But like
to help the community, I guess
the community asked for it and they did it. Like so in their defense, like I have been blown away with like what has happened with the FPV side. But
yeah, I definitely, I can definitely see both sides of this argument, because historically there have been products that just EOL, what we call end of life, and they're no longer supported, and that really is just like basic economics for a lot of it. Again, the pro side is a labor of love. The pro side is about its most valuable aspect is as a learning tool, as a tool of innovation, I think, because if you just look at the straight binary information, it doesn't even come close. It's not even a comparison.
I just want to add a thought to that really quick. It's like if you look at, I've become a huge motorsports fan in the last couple of years. Like this is my AMG Petronas Autosport right there. But if you look at like Formula One,
covered in sweat. Is that the one you were sweating through on your last?
That one, yeah, no.
It's
that
disgusting,
one
by the way.
It gets your attention though, right? We're talking about it.
Clickbaity.
But if you look at Formula One in terms of like a money making machine, they're not making any money at all, right? Or they're making very slim margins relative to the Mercedes brand overall or the Red Bull brand overall. But what they are doing is driving innovation and improvement in the product lines that they then support, right?
Yeah.
Anti-lock brakes are a result of Formula One, stuff like that.
Belts,
so
roll cages, crumple zones, yes, all of it.
So in the same way that Formula One drives innovation through going out racing on the pro side. Well, I don't know why I did quotation marks, but like on the pro side, in the same way DJI is continuing to develop its pro products because it helps influence the technology that they're pushing out in the more consumer line stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree that is true. The difference though is that if you're like I've used that exact metaphor, pro car racing as a branding thing, because I'm always advocating for the pro side. Like that's probably annoying to my superiors at this point, how much I'm advocating for the pro side. But the difference is that the amount of money that's required to, let's say, have a Formula One racer, like how much they're actually investing in that, right?
Yeah.
Or Chevy or Ford or any other major car manufacturer, versus the visibility of what they're doing. How many people are watching that car racing and saying like, oh yeah, I just saw that this Formula One racer from Chevy is doing really well in this race. Now I'm going to go buy an entry level Chevy, right? Or they're using that as a tool to advertise,
tool,
right? Yep. And so when people see like, oh, the Chevy car just won this race or whatever, you're like, that's a huge boom for Chevy, right? But for us on the pro side, people aren't even aware most of the time of the gear that we're using, right? Like people aren't going on behind the scenes and saying like, oh, look, that guy's got a Ronin too, and a ready rig. Like we do that because we can recognize between these products. But for the most part, people have no idea what's being used. It's just
what's
more
a
camera
spreading
jack.
legs 2000.
Exactly. So what I can say is, if you love DJI Pro products, if you want to see more of them, then tweet about it, gram about it, make YouTube videos about it, because believe me, that actually makes a difference. And in a world where the rest of the Pro line isn't necessarily that visible, if you want to continue to see DJI investing in this stuff, we kind of have to fill in the gap, because they're not getting like that kind of exposure that a race car is going to get. Like they're not getting that kind of value for that's going to continue to drive it, to make it worth it to continue making these products. So we, as the Pro community, like so much of what I do is just supporting people in the Pro community that either need training to understand the how to maximize a product, or just like half the time, if I'm dealing with a Pro partner like Dexter, for example, I'm saying like, oh, did you know you can do this? Like this is how this is designed. And because so many of the Pro products have all of these little hidden features and all these things they can do that are amazing that people don't even necessarily know about, that's a lot of what I do, is just like trying to communicate like, oh, here's a scenario where you're really going to be able to use this Ronin too. Here's a scenario like, I was in Hawaii, I think, just before the COVID-19 stuff shut everything down, and we were doing the Hike Pro surfing thing for Red Bull, right? And it's like this big surf competition that's highly vocal, like everybody knows who they are. And the innovation of the smart controller being able to use an HDMI out port to go into a live broadcast platform, like they just hadn't thought of it, right? And so then I show up and I'm like, oh, you guys want to do live broadcast, but you don't have confidence in the video link. Well, have you tried this? And obviously the range on the smart controller with Mavic 2, like I don't know if you guys saw any of the shots that came out of that,
absurd, but
they were ridiculous. I mean, the shots, like I couldn't believe shooting them, that I was actually seeing what I was seeing while I was shooting them. Like it was so incredible. And that's where technology really drives innovation, like the kind of opposite of what we're talking about. It's like once people saw that, oh my God, we can get this 1080 HD download in real time, that we can actually, from a live platform, we can cut back to the drone shot of the surfer and have confidence that the video link's going to be there when the guy at the distro deck is going to cut back to it. Like that's a huge thing.
All right, that's enough DJI for one night. I mean, I love it. I could talk about it all night. Like, I mean, I have freaking 15 drones that are all DJI FPV and all that stuff.
There's so much to talk about. There goes on and on. I mean, you could just
in any different industry. But Donovan hinted at a story from Captain America Civil War. That was the explosion reference that we had a few minutes ago. And I've heard the story, and it was, but I want him to tell it to John now. So
and all of you guys and girls listening out there.
Yeah. So Donovan, can you tell us a little bit about the crazy shot from Captain America Civil War?
So we got, I was still working for Pictovision. So this would have been 2013. I don't know. You have to go back in IMDb when Civil War was made. It's all a blur after a while, but we get told.
You're an OG.
Yeah, definitely an OG. So we get this, like, you guys are going somewhere day after tomorrow, and they didn't tell us where it is. And this sounds really weird, but it's not actually unusual when you're going to go to like a big secret project that they don't tell you what you're doing until you get there. But at the same time, it's always kind of sketchy, because you're like, okay, until you see like your plane ticket that production books for you, you don't even know where you're going. So it's me and my favorite cam op, who's now one of my best friends, Jake, and our tech, and shout out to Jake Capistran. And so we don't know where we're going, but then we get the plane tickets and it says we're going to Atlanta. And so I know that Marvel has just built a big studio outside of Atlanta. And so we start like taking bets on, what this job is going to be. So then I don't know if you guys have ever had any of these like secret jobs, but yeah,
not really.
I've had a couple of.
I've had one that was secret, which I can't tell no, never mind.
So right, secret jobs. So anyway, so we get on the plane, And on the way out, we're like, what is it? What could this be? Is it, like a reality TV thing where they have contestants they don't want to reveal? Because, there's a lot of drone and reality TVs, and I'm sure you guys are aware. And often they don't want, you to know that this person lasted to the end or whatever. And that was what some of the guesses were. But being a huge Marvel fanboy nerd, I was thinking that it probably was a Marvel project, or hoping that it was a Marvel project. So we get out there and we get picked up in a black SUV at the airport, and like little sign. Still don't know what it is. The driver's not saying anything other than.
Turns out Nick Fury is driving.
This is really good service, by the way. The limo.
Yeah.
I'm normally lugging my gear through the.
It was a limo. Okay. Normally it's a minivan that we rent.
Amazing.
Is what production wants to pay for.
Are you directing this?
What? The movie? Yeah. I'll get to that. So we get picked up at the airport. We're driven outside. I can't say where we were driven. Obviously, I'm not going to say where this place is, but it's like 40 minutes or so, maybe an hour. And then all of a sudden we get off the freeway and we're driving through these curvy roads, and it's, trees overhanging. And I'm like, they could also just kill us and harvest our organs. This could just be like a really elaborate, plan to murder us all. But seems like there's easier ways to get organs. So then we come around a corner, and on the side of this giant soundstage is a huge poster of Captain America that they've painted on the side of this giant soundstage. And my, of course, $10 was on Marvel, so I won that part of the bet. And then now we realize, okay, we're here. And so the very first thing that happens is you sign a stack of NDAs. Non-disclosure agreements, literally like a stack of them. It's like buying a car. After a while, you're just like signing. You don't even read it anymore. You don't even care anymore. I could have been giving away a kidney. So we get there, and now we know that this is actually what we're here for. And the job actually came from I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kevin LaRosa, but he's the aero coordinator at HeliNet. Super great, awesome
great helicopter pilot,
incredible helicopter pilot. And he actually, for some reason, wasn't available to do this, which is why I ended up getting the job. So I will be forever grateful to Kevin for not being available to do this for whatever reason. He was probably doing something cooler.
That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I was
cooler than Marvel.
Shout out to the B Squad.
You'd have to ask Kevin, but I'm sure there was something, or maybe it was just way higher paying. I don't know. So then we get out there and we do the NDA thing, and then we get the previs, and we've had conversations now with Post Effects, and they give me.
So let me just jump in. So because a lot of people don't know what previs is. So what is a previs?
So previs is often called like storyboards, but basically it's any sort of animation, or sometimes it's literally hand-drawn pictures or photographs. It's anything that is a pre-visualization of what you're going to shoot. So that's where the previs part comes in. But basically, it's just like some information about what the shot's going to be, and it takes many different forms. In this case, because it's Marvel and it's fancy, it was actually what's called an animatic, which is a fully rendered animated version of what they want the shot to be. And they show you that, and they're like, we want that.
Like Toy Story 1 level graphics, probably, like
Toy Story 1 level graphics.
Wait, for real? Toy Story 1?
PS2, maybe, It's maybe. Down to the lighting, the wardrobe, camera angles, camera lens.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
The movies are already shot in the computer, essentially, right?
Wow.
Yeah, they shows that size with that much money invested. Everything is planned from the get-go. And so for our little shot, which I was told was a $4 million shot, that could only be done once.
And you gotta just put that right over the head. You can't even let that phase you. $4 million. That's it.
I was like, whatever. Oh, and the drone's gonna be the main camera for this explosion that can only be done once. Yeah, no problem. Did I thank Kevin for this? Maybe I should. Yeah. Anyway, so they show me the animatic, and it is a little bit intimidating when you see like this is exactly what we want. Right.
Yeah.
And
sure.
A lot of times, there'll be like an outline, a rough idea of what's wanted. But with these boys in the big leagues, it is not only this is exactly what we want, but we want you to be at exactly this altitude. We want you to come in at this airspeed. We want you to bank at this angle. And it is that specific, right?
Oh my gosh.
And did I mention that we're working with a hand-built X8 with, I think it was still a NASA flight controller?
Oh,
yeah, because this is 2013, 2014, somewhere in there.
Yeah, maybe it was the first gen A2, but let's just say not to the level of precision that today's drones are. Like very much still sketchy.
This is Civil War, right?
Yeah, this is Civil War.
2016 is when it was released.
Basically that GPS mode, Nurk, that you think everyone's, just flying around it easily.
I did not say GPS mode. I said stabilized mode.
Yeah, stabilized mode.
Right.
Not so stabilized, probably.
NASA and A2 did still have like full manual modes.
Like the Phantom 2s.
Yes, exactly. Like you could actually fly it in full manual, but there was absolutely no reason to do that other than to say that you did. Oh no,
exactly. That's exactly how I lost my first drone in the ocean.
There you go.
Notice how he says first.
Right. No, we're not going to go into how many drones I've crashed at the airfield, but many, because as a pro pilot, you want to do all of your pushing at the airfield. You want to do 100%. All of your risky testing and maneuvering where there's not going to be 200 people standing around watching you in a various drone.
All right, so you're flying a big ass drone.
Yeah, we're flying
old ass technology. At the time, it was state of the art.
At the time was cutting edge, state of the art,
bleeding edge. Nobody's done it before, and here you are doing it on set.
This wasn't the first big job we had done with this drone, but the one we had done just prior to this was a big TV show that I'm not going to name, and everything did not work as it should have. So we did a bunch of airfield testing. Everything seemed better, but I had spent 4 months tuning this drone. 4 months, right? Like that's how it was. And this is what
I spent about 4 minutes tuning drones.
Right. Which is why, obviously I'm super impressed with how easy things are getting and a little most
innovation breeds laziness, apparently.
Yes, exactly. So we get out to the set, we see the previs, and the set is like just this part of the backlot that they have built railroad containers where they've stacked them all on top of each other. And this is a method when you're going to do like a really big blue or green screen, because it becomes this huge sail in the wind. You have to have a ton of weight to actually be the backing for the blue screen. And this is, probably the biggest blue screen I've ever seen. I worked on a movie way back in the day called Triple X. I think it was
Vin Diesel
movie. Vin Diesel, yeah. And
Skydiver.
At that point, they may have had a wall that was this size, but I think this is probably the biggest one. Like if you stood 200 feet away from it, you could not see around it. Like it took up your entire peripheral vision.
Amazing.
How big this thing was. So we get out there.
Do they hang fabric at that point, or do they just paint them?
Yeah, it's fabric.
That was fabric, yeah, because it has like the tracking marks and a different texture and whatever else.
Sorry.
So,
that's my
no problem. Yeah. So they tell us, this is what we want, and it's very, very precise. But don't worry, we brought you guys out 3 days early so that you can run the shot, until you get it down. Right.
Nice. So thank God.
Thank God. Like how often does that ever happen, John? Where
not
they
much.
actually give you rehearsal time, right? Most of the time you got to come out, hit the ground flying, as we like to say, and no one ever gives you a chance to even get a decent rehearsal, and you usually just roll it and let's make it happen.
Hey,
right?
On a $4 million shot, it's a smart move to give you 1 or 2 cracks at it. It might as well be a day or two of rehearsal. That's smart.
Yeah, 100%. And it is actually shocking how rarely that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially in the high budget movie world, you would think that they would want to pad it, give you that leeway and that practice time.
And especially for something that is hard to recreate every single time as a drone, right?
Yeah.
Like a dolly move is going to be way easier to do 20 times than a drone move.
Yeah, but that's something that they don't necessarily understand, but you're completely right.
No, and that is absolutely correct in that they don't understand. It's like the drone is expected to, like I said, be this magic camera orb that can fly through waves and repeat shots precisely, over and over and over again, because it's
more like a paintbrush almost.
Yeah, but if you're when you hit the set with your crew, you are held up to the same standards as the Russian arm guys, as the edge arm guys, as
Technocrane,
the Technocrane guys, like the people that are using equipment that was designed for this industry, that's designed to be safe, fast, super efficient, right? Like that's how you're
and repeatable.
Exactly. And we're not dealing at this point in time. There's no RTK. There's no waypoint. They're like none of this stuff works. And even the GPS that's more precise than anything else, there's still like a 3-foot variance, where it'll just kind of bounce around in the wind.
For everyone that's not watching, Donovan's toilet bowling right now. He's doing the classic toilet bowl move where your drone is just doing this maneuver.
I thought he was going to fall off his chair for a second.
No, that's the dreaded toilet bowl.
It's I'm like halfway through now. So.
That's another type of toilet bowl.
Is that what's in that water bottle?
Yeah.
Green water bottle.
It's that Irish green water bottle.
I'm still so clearly speaking after half a bottle of Jameson.
Nice.
Take max in your one Corona.
You think it's one?
I have an IV in my leg.
Red IV. Nice. I'm gonna get lost. Like there's
Sorry.
The way that I have to tell this story.
This is how you've told this story hundreds of Thanksgivings in a row.
Are you trying to tell us how to podcast? Come on.
Not at all. I would never.
We clearly have this down.
How to do your job. So they show us the animatic. I get a little stressed out, but then we find out we have 3 days to run this shot.
Great.
So now we're a little more relieved. And of course, day one, we have a motor that just won't spin up for no reason.
Oh God.
So like quick switch out. Okay, cool.
Wait, you brought backup motor or backup arms?
I don't honestly remember at that point. It was probably motors.
You brought out the soldering iron.
Oh yeah, exactly. And now you know that.
Oh man,
you have to solder on set. That's always a great thing. And for me, the only times I've had to do that is with like a video transmitter. It was like a Paralinx, I think, or Teradek something.
Not a motor.
You know what though? That being said, the last time I had to solder on set, I blew some people's minds because it was like the fifth backup drone, and we had downtime, and I was like, I'll just fix it right now. It'll be fine. And so I sat down at like the concession table, not concession. What's the word I'm looking for? The
crafty.
The craft table, like just one of where you sit and eat your lunch. And I just pulled out my soldering iron and like rebuilt the drone from the ground up. And like the director, the DP, and the producer all came by and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just rebuilding this drone." They're like, "You can do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine. I do this all the time. I just wanted to, this is my like eighth backup. I just want to make sure it's ready to go in case we need it for some reason." They're like, "That's fucking cool."
There was a time.
That being said,
where soldering on set may have impressed someone or given them confidence in your awesome abilities. We are no longer in that period of time. Soldering iron now is a sign of danger and miserable failure. So
SOS.
That failure that I'm talking about, actually, I was doing a job for a friend of mine's company for Wild Rabbit. I don't know if you're familiar with Drew and those guys, but they're pretty awesome. His AC, Nate LaBruza, shout out to Nate Dog. We hadn't worked together. Maybe that was our first job together, and the video transmitter failed. And he grabs it, runs into the van, and he's like pulls it apart, and he's soldering, And that moment was like, all right, like this, I have confidence in this guy. Like he's able to fix this thing that has no business necessarily knowing how to fix this video transmitter. He did it, like just in the back of the van, and we're up in the air again. And like that, I can't overemphasize how important it is for everybody on a drone team to be able to perform at a level like that, because there's so much technology working in what we do between the camera systems and the gimbal and the drone and the wireless and all that it only takes one aspect of that to fail in the smallest way, and it just screws everything up, right? I mean, less so now, but at that time, we probably only had the one video transmitter, it probably wasn't a backup option. We've all learned through the if production has to rent something, they're not going to rent backups, right? At that point, like nobody was carrying around a $15,000 video transmitter, right? It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so shout out to Nate for being able to make that work, and just in general, the quality of everybody, also understanding what everybody else's job is also really helpful, I think.
Yeah.
We keep digressing into like tips for crew and professional.
No, that's great.
But that understanding that, your responsibilities, what your responsibilities as a tech are, what your responsibilities as a VO are, sometimes those positions are combined. what the camera operator's responsibilities are, who's going to talk to the director and the DP and take, so there's one contact for that kind of direction. Is it going to be you? Is it going to be the cam op? And like John, I do both and then kind of jump back and forth between cam opping and flying. And so I always have to kind of figure that out. Like, wait, where am I today? Who's in charge? Like, am I doing this, or is it, so you got to be able to kind of jump back and forth. And that's also a good advice for being successful in this business is you want to be able to do anything that's needed, right? So like I'm much more valuable if I am a great pilot, if I'm a great cam op, if I'm a great tech, if I'm great at running batteries back and forth, if that's what somebody needs. Like if I know all of the aspects of how this drone crew works, then I'm going to be excellent in any position I'm put in. And also, God forbid, I want to start my own drone company someday, like knowing not only all those aspects, but how they get the job, who's dealing with
God forbid. I love that.
Or God forbid, you have a problem and you need to figure it out. You have an experience in that role and that duty to figure it out, whether it's an issue with the battery's charger or fixing a motor or a video transmitter or a camera setting or being in those shoes, I think, helps you to work as a team when there's an issue of problem solving, which is, and honestly, in one of my opinions, one of the most fun elements of my job is I enjoy problem solving. Little challenges that you can overcome are really fulfilling to me. So it's like, that's what
you picked the right business, John. Definitely picked the right business. You like problem solving. That's the thing, like being versatile in that way where, let's say that two things go wrong with the gimbal at the same time, right? If I know that I can flip that lens for the cam op and the first AC while he's running to get that battery or whatever it is, like that's when the real cohesion and the professionalism of a team really shines through, is when it's not just one guy with his arms crossed going like, nope, that's not my department. It's saying like, oh dude, no, I've got the lens, you grab that, and when people on the set see that and they see that level of professionalism and cooperation, that's how every other department on a film set works together, right? So drone, to be respected the same way that other crew is respected, has to perform the way that other crew performs, and that's a key component of that, is that level of cooperation.
But also
the ear techs too.
Yeah, the ear techs, but it's not just how you work within your crew. Donovan, you were kind of saying it's how you work within the rest of the crews too. So knowing, and that only can come with experience, and that's how it came with me, is knowing what the other departments are responsible for, and when you should be asking for help, who are you going to ask? And not only that, is how you're going to ask it without making yourself look like an idiot or pissing somebody off, and getting it done as fast as possible. So whether that's
the idea of knowing how to ask for help, not just when, but how.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Key Grip, sir, can we have a sandbag over here? Or it's windy, and that's one way I'd like to do it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's definitely the best way.
Speaking
as
with the grips,
grip for 15 years, you definitely want to ask in a very passive, high pitch,
kind of a like it's like not a bow. It's not a full bow. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And they're standing up on the truck looking down at you.
Mm-hmm. John does make a valid point, though, in that there are certain people on a set who you're going to ask for certain things and others that you're not going to ask for certain things. And even in some cases where you were just talking to this director 2 minutes ago about the shot, but now she's doing something else. And if you walk up to her and distract her while she's blocking, they're going to rip your face off. Right?
Yeah.
It's those things that you, like you said, you can only really learn through experience or watching, which is why it's so important to work on other drone crews, to go out with professional crews, to work for free if you have to, just to be able to be on a set, to see how somebody does it. Like that's how I became a camera operator, is being willing to go out and just learn the way that people do stuff. So, one final tip I'm going to give for drone crews is the first AD is your best friend on the set when you're on a pro set. And that's across the board for episodic TV, for music videos, for commercials, for feature film. If you don't know who to ask, go to the first AD. Like that's the person that's going to be the most patient with you, the most willing to help you, because their job is to just make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible and everybody makes their day, right? Typically that's going to be, hopefully, the calmest person on the set, who knows everybody's names, everybody's department, what everybody does. And so if you didn't know who to ask for a sandbag, you didn't know that was grips necessarily. If you need a light moved behind you, because it's in the way where you need to be to set up your station to take off, and you don't know that that's the electrician that moves that. First AD is going to help keep you from pissing somebody off. Help point you in the right direction. So that's the first thing when I go to a set. Where's the first AD? I'm going to tell them where we are. We've arrived. We have our gear. What our setup time is going to be. If there's any previs, who else is on the? Do we have any other locations for today? Do you have sides so that I can see what happens before and after this scene? Like all of those things is what. If I was a dolly grip and I'm on set, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm the most aware of what's happening on this set, and I can be the most valuable dolly grip on that set. These are the ways that I'm going to do that. And that absolutely 100% translates to pro drone work as well.
That's great. And the first AD is first assistant director for anybody wondering out there.
Yeah. See, I'm so entrenched that I don't even know when I'm using film acronyms. And like, it's been so many years. And also my entire family now says, copy that because of me. Because eventually you just don't realize that you're speaking movie
So leading into this podcast tonight, I sent out a text message saying, hey guys, I'm going to send out links shortly. Both John and Donovan said, copy that, period. Exactly that way. And I was just like, this is hilarious.
Right. So copy would be the most efficient form of that communication. But if you're a professional, copy that and then actually adding a period for punctuation just means you're a little more professional.
I just said copy for the record.
Yeah.
Same idea.
Great. So thanks, Paul, for making me accidentally criticize John's.
No, it's good because I'm efficient.
I embellished the story a little bit to make it funnier, and then John said, "No, fuck you."
So I'm still waiting to hear about this shot, though. I mean,
the
$4
million shot.
Enough about the crafty scenario.
I know this is going to be edited, so I'm giving you like moments that you're going to be able to pull out and place another section. So you're like, oh, this is the section where Donovan pontificates about how to be get respect as a drone crew.
No.
For 15 minutes.
That's amazing feedback. Honestly, genuinely, that is extremely useful for for people that are trying to start that are not sure how to go at this. Like that is giving good flight insights into how to enter this industry.
Yeah,
right? Like
I'm learning.
You don't know.
I'm seriously. 100%. I mean, it's
absolutely
just as you work with different people in the industry, you learn different things.
Donovan, do not sell yourself short. Like you carry all 42 years of your experience that us youngins don't know how to.
God. Ages. Okay, so
see that bus going by? Poosh.
There's a lot of us in this business that are like close the door behind you mentality, right?
Right.
There's a lot of guys out there that are like, I don't want any more fucking drone pilots coming in. I don't want any more guys competing with me. I don't want any more guys bringing down my day rate, right? And so what that creates, though, is a lot of resentment and a lot of unskilled people who are out there. And being that, as we all know, producers are going to probably choose the lowest bid most of the time, unless they put you before. So who are they going to get, right? They're going to get a guy who is willing to work for almost nothing, who probably doesn't have a lot of experience, and is going to go out on a set and represent us, our entire industry, right?
Yeah.
So that guy's going to go out and not know how to work his own camera, not understand who to talk to on the set, all of those things that are so just cringeworthy for us. It's because nobody's willing to actually go, hey man, let me help you out. Let me tell you how to actually look like a professional. Let me tell you what to.
I could name a few names, but I'm not going to.
You could, I could, I'm sure John could. But the truth is, the guys that are incapable of learning that stuff, like John says, I'm still learning, right? When you stop learning, you're done. You're out, right? Like the people that are actually incapable of growing and learning and improving as drone pilots and drone cam ops, aerial cinematographers, those people, they're going to just Darwinism. They will be eventually out of the business, right? So we should be encouraging new blood. We should be encouraging new interests, people that are willing to come out and learn because we have the honor of being the generation that is setting the precedent for all the drone crews that come after us, right? Like grips, electricians, the prop people, everybody else, they've figured their stuff out over the last 100+ years, right?
Yeah. Like helicopters would 20 years ago.
Yes, exactly. So to me, I look at that as an honor. Like we have the benefit of saying like, hey, next generation guys, this is what a pro drone crew looks like. This is how a pro drone crew functions. Because at the end of the day, like that kind of unity and that kind of willingness to share information, that's going to make all of us look better, fly safer, and I think make more money in the future. It's the worst case scenario is the guy that shows up and doesn't know what he's doing or crashes or can't talk to the DP. All of those things, that's what it's really hard, because you'd either have to go to film school, you'd have to read books, you'd have to know somebody. Like if you're technically blind,
or like the guy that like crashes drone in like somebody's head or something like that. That's crazy.
I could also name a few names. But I'm not going to. So yeah. So the previs, which John thankfully defined.
Wait, we're back to
we're all the way back.
We're back all the way back to previs.
So you have
so many digressions.
So the previs was a little intimidating, but we had 3 days to shoot it. So then we had some mechanical issues, and then I literally spent the next 3 days just like running this shot. To get it
as was prescribed,
altitude, the exact airspeed, the exact angle. Yes, because the post effects in these level of movies, they know exactly what they want. They know exactly how it's going to cut, where it's going to go, and like I said, they even had an animated version of exactly the shot. So we're running it, and then here comes shoot day. So on shoot day, we get set up. We have our like comfortable spot picked out where I have like a perfect line of sight. I know exactly the line I'm going to fly, and I'm feeling super confident at this point because we have for once in a blue moon, we've gotten the appropriate amount of rehearsal time to get this precise shot. Right? Cool. So all of the actors and Iron Man's there and Black Widow, and I think
all of the actors is Scarlett Johansson, Robert Downey Jr.,
right?
Tom Huddleston. Like,
I mean, yeah. So they're all there, but because this is going to be a giant explosion, they're actually going to clear the backlot area, right? So it's just the two stunt people. And then that's supposed to be it. But of course, where I am for the initial shot design is perfectly safe, no problem, whatever. And then as the air raid sirens are going off, which is letting us know that it's 5 minutes before we're going to do this $4 million shot, it can only be done once. The directors, two very nice brothers, the Russo brothers that direct these movies, decide that they don't want that shot. So I'm told, we actually would prefer if you're over here at this angle instead of here. And of course, I'm a professional drone pilot, so I can't just say, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, we've been here for 3 days doing this." You can bleep it out when I swear, right?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? We've been here for 3 days doing this. No. So what I actually say is, okay, great, no problem.
Copy that.
Just so you know.
Period.
Just so you know. Post was very specific in the direction that they gave us, and I just want to double check that that we were given a really specific. Yep, they know they don't want you there anymore. They want you over here.
My gosh!
So now we're like 4 minutes away from the explosion happening. Now I have to reposition myself, and exactly where they want the shot to start is on top of a Titan construction crane. So now I have to fly backwards over this construction crane onto the set, which is now behind me, so I can maintain my visual line of sight. So I have my monitor where I can see what the Red Dragon, I think is the best camera we had at that point, could see, and like flying just over the top, literally like 3 feet over the top of this 45-degree angle construction crane as I come in. And so
you didn't have FPV on that thing, probably, did you?
We had some form of FPV which constantly failed. So I could not rely on it at all.
Sure.
And so it is that skill that you were talking about where you fly truly using line of sight and you can still make the drone go where it needs to go and fly a straight line. Like that's highly recommended for all you new guys coming into the business. You got to be able to fly by the seat of your pants. You can't. And
FPV, DJI, cinema grade. Everyone should learn how to fly line of sight.
Yeah,
100%.
100%. You need to be able to invert, look at yourself, fly, keep the nose pointed at you, 90 degrees, which is where most people crash because only half the controls are reversed. Highly recommended from 3 pro pilots that when all else fails, and it will, you just need to be able to fly that drone without using any assist of any kind and just bring it in.
Yes, sir.
Without like losing your shit.
Any
either.
hesitation.
You have to know. You have to have it through the whole time. You have to know
Yeah.
how that drone is positioned. You know, not just when it.
I mean, 100%. I was super lucky in that I came from single rotor RC,
which is
because it's just all control all the time.
You're not CP helis.
You're just looking at it. Yeah, the entire time. So my muscle memory for that was already developed before I became a drone pilot.
Small digression. What percentage of, so you said that there's like 10, 15 guys that fly in Hollywood. What percentage of those guys came from CP helis?
I'd say pretty good amount. I know.
I would say
just seat of your pants. It's fine. 90%.
I would say 90%. Yeah.
I love that information. Like, that's super cool.
Yeah,
I have never flown a CP heli.
Because that the what John was talking about not losing your SHIT, that's a skill that
you can say shit.
Definitely when you're, well, you said you can't bleep, so you know, like
no. I said I won't bleep.
The skill of not losing your shit is really important in those instances. And when you're flying a helicopter that could literally, like the guy in New York, cut his the top of your own head off. You learn not to panic. To be able to react quickly and appropriately, but you can't lose your shit. Like that's thing one. Like on day one of drones, professional cinema drone pilot school, that's what would be on the blackboard. You can never lose your composure, no matter what happens.
So last minute, the brothers changed the shot.
All right, thank you for bringing me back.
No worries.
So I asked the pyro supervisor. I asked the first AD if I can talk to the pyro supervisor. And the pyro supervisor, for you guys can probably figure out what this one means, is the guy responsible for fire and explosions and all stuff that goes boom.
Bang, bang, boom, boom.
Exactly. And he comes over. At least I think this was the guy. They might have just sent somebody over to talk to me.
Probably crazy as shit, this guy.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And I said, so how big is this explosion going to be? And he said, big. And I said, okay. Well,
this guy's getting paid to make a big explosion. He's not going to make a little one.
If the pyro guy says it's going to be big, you're like
running. Yeah, just start running. So I go, okay, 100 yards away big, 200 yards away big, like how big? And he's like, you'll be good at 200 yards. Like, okay, cool. So that's about where I'm standing.
Where's he standing?
Like 200 yards away. They're in the behind the blast shields.
They're in the bunker.
The rest of production in the bunker. The 2 stunt people, and I'm the only non-stunt moron that is standing out here as well. Right?
You're not even looking at the explosion. You're looking up at your drone.
No, exactly. I know that the explosion is going to happen behind
you.
Right?
Oh my god.
That's what I know. And that it's going to be big. So cool. It's going to be big. Great. So here we go. And we're rolling.
It's going to be 200 yards big.
Yeah. Here we go. We're rolling. And now here comes the countdown, which is, of course, over giant loudspeakers. And there's when you're trying to keep your hands from shaking from adrenaline, you're trying to hold your fingers on the sticks. There's nothing better than hearing 10, 9, 8 over loudspeakers that are actually like shaking your body, right? So you're like, okay, cool. And I know that I'm going to need to go a little bit early. This is like just a little bit. So I go on 2 and I start flying backwards towards myself. No FPV. This is all line of sight in sorry, Paul, attitude mode. I was taking advantage of self-leveling, so I can't take full manual credit.
You're not a real pilot.
For this shot. Yeah. So I start flying backwards over me, and on 2-1, I'm about this far turned, and I'm still not looking at the set, but I'm just trying to keep my hands from shaking, and I'm just thinking like, don't twitch, right? And then I feel the concussion and the heat from the flames. Boom, right? And this is right as I know I have to hold this very precise, perfect line right into the set. And so I'm turning and the boom hits and I'm like, did I twitch? No, I didn't twitch. I think I twitched. Maybe I didn't. No, I'm good. As the drone's coming across, by the time I turn and I'm actually looking back at the set, now it's just black smoke. This giant plume of black smoke. And as I turn, I'm following my line of sight to the drone, right as the drone disappears into this plume of black smoke. And it is gone, right? So of
Oh
course,
my God, that's incredible. That's so scary. That is like worst nightmare. That's a nightmare cloud. Oh my God. Go ahead.
Other than the $4 million shot, how many dollars are in the air?
Oh, the dollars in the air is probably like 160 grand at this point. Right?
But that's not even, it's not even about the money. It's about like possibly crashing into somebody at that point.
Yeah.
So I know that on the other side of that giant black smoke wall is a physical wall of railroad containers that have blue screen on them, right? So what do? I don't panic. I quickly react.
Good.
I'm like full reverse stick on the elevator stick, right? Like it's just gotta come back out. Like I'm in Addy mode. I know that it's okay. I'm just gonna reverse it, right? So I'm like full reverse stick. And this is a moment that I wish to God somebody had been shooting BTS.
They have to be. It has to be out there.
You would think that this would exist somewhere, but I remember that they took away the phones from all of the other guys in my crew. And when I still had like the A2 app on my phone at that time, they would surround me with 4x4 floppies while I was using the app and then take my phone away. So like that's how intense they are about it. So I actually don't have confidence that this exists anywhere. But if it did, if this shot did, so this is what happens. Giant plume of black smoke, right? And then as I'm reversing, the smoke just makes this perfect parting, like Moses parting the Red Sea, and the drone just comes out of this plume of black smoke. If this had been filmed, it would be on my everything.
It'd probably be in the movie. They would probably put that in there. It'd probably look badass.
The suspension of disbelief. Here's the drone. Whee!
This looks so amazing that I've actually considered like going out to the middle of nowhere and just burning a bunch of tires so I could try to recreate. But then, I'm sure this is like an ecological crime or something. So I probably wouldn't do that.
Just say it was for a movie, and people are like, "Oh, I love that movie."
Yeah, it's just cinematic immunity.
I've seen it.
So the drone comes out of the smoke. The giant plume of black smoke, and I am just beside myself, thrilled that it's actually coming out of the smoke. I bring it in and I land, and as soon as I put it down, bam, the adrenaline hits, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like it's not about like we're like Supermen that don't have the adrenaline, right? It's that we're like forcing ourselves to control the adrenaline until the moment where it's okay to let it flow through your body and make your hands shake, right? So in that moment where everything, the props spin down and I'm finally taking a breath, like, okay, I think we're good. Like I didn't hear any screaming from Video Village right away, and cool. So then I'm talking to Jay comes over, we're talking. I'm like, did you see? Like, did it bump at all? Like, did I? I don't think I twitched. Did you see?
Classic pilot. Right? Classic pilot. Oh my God, that was terrible. Meanwhile, it was like amazing.
And meanwhile, it's amazing, right? Like, if I don't know yet what has happened, like I'm sure Nurk actually can probably pull this video to show at this point in the podcast what the shot actually looks like.
Yep.
But I don't know what it looks like. And then I get a tap on the shoulder. Hey, the directors want to see you. So go into the behind the blast shield to the tent. And like no expression, no like, hey man, the directors want to see you. Great job. No, the directors want to see you. Okay, cool. So I'm like, huge swallow. Cool, great. Yeah. Go in, and I'm feeling like, no, I didn't twitch. And as I walk in, I can see over them, because their monitors are massive, that they're watching this shot and that they have it, playing back in a loop. So I'm like slowly walking up, just to see what it is. And then somebody makes a noise. They both turn around and they're both smiling. So that moment is when I realized that it must have been good, because they're both smiling, right? Or they're sadists and they're thrilled that they're about to fire me or whatever it is going to happen. But no, I'm pretty confident that this is a great shot. So then I walk up, and the first time I actually see the shot is on their monitors, and it's the shot that's in the movie. It's like this perfect line that goes right in. Iron Man flies into it, the missiles blow up, the truck splits in half, whatever. So I see that, and it's the first moment where I can actually breathe. And I'm like, oh God, to myself, of course, like, thank God I didn't twitch. Thank God that the shot actually worked. And this is, obviously for being able to fly in attitude mode where you can let the drone coast
Yeah.
is the number one reason to learn to fly in attitude mode.
Oh yeah.
Because you're not fighting GPS and you can do these smoother, more cinematic shots. And that saved me in this instance because I probably did twitch a little bit when the explosion hit, but because I was flying in Addy, I was able to kind of smooth out that movement and it didn't show, right? It didn't show up. So they turn, they're smiling and they're stoked. Great shot, man. And so, of course, I've been a nervous wreck for the last 90 seconds, like walking in here. And then what's my reaction? Yeah, I mean, that's what we do, man. That's why you hired us. So.
Let me know if you guys need anything else. Let me know.
Yeah, we're for you.
Yeah, dude, that's the mic drop of the drone pilot, though. It's just like, yeah, no big deal.
No problem. That's what we do. And then I walked outside and like probably had like a mini nervous breakdown. Yeah. So if you can't find the footage to drop in, Paul, let me know.
We'll find it.
Clip.
I've seen it.
There's actually two versions. There's one where they're at an airport, and then there's one they use in the commercial where you actually get to see the truck blow up. And I will say that after so many years on the set as a grip, obviously I've seen and been close to my fair share of explosions. This one was the granddaddy of them all. Like I doubt that there will ever be an explosion that creates like I could feel my organs vibrating. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the biggest one I've ever seen.
We don't want to know about your organs.
We are still talking about it to this day. That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So I'm gonna not tell the nightmare stories on this version of the podcast, so you guys can get some sleep.
You're definitely back for a repeat visit.
Absolutely, I would be thrilled to. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe we need a side stories version of this, where it's just nightmare stories, but like our voices are like we can do a little bit of distortions.
Everybody knows it's Donovan, but he's like silhouetted, like with a backlight. Like it's just like
like the director from the Fly Through the Wave. He knows who he is. And he's going to see this, and he's going to be like, "Fuck that guy," bringing that up. I didn't know how drones worked.
Yeah. That's how it went with the first episode of this podcast, John.
Yeah, you can't, everybody. There are a lot of, there's a lot of things you shouldn't say, and there's a lot of egos in this business. So, but I think part of, like we just talked about, part of the point of this show is to, kind of. Really, it's the therapy, right, Paul? It's the therapy for us. It's not about the listeners. It's not about entertainment. It's about sharing these stories with our friends and getting out there and just learning from one another. But no, it is about the community too and giving back there. But
we've all been through so many different things, like whether whatever perspective you're in the drone industry, whether that's FPV or cinematography or industrial, whatever, like we've all experienced different aspects of our own
stresses,
ineptitude, right? It's such a new industry. It's an opportunity for us to try new things and to be a part of something new.
That's what you got out of that I was inept. I mean, I was amazing that I pulled that stuff off under the circumstances. I mean, Paul is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. It's a thankless industry too. After you just get no thanks.
We're 6 years old. Okay, 6 years, where people have been shooting normal cameras for 100.
Were you in the credits on that film? Did you guys make the credits?
Yes, we did make the credits. My name is in there somewhere, I think. They might have put me last name first, first name last, which happens for some reason. Donovan Davis. People put Davis Donovan.
I'm not sure which one is your first name either. So
it's Donovan. There is one of my best friends is named Davis DeLillo. He's the head pilot at Ether Films, another good drone company, cinematography company here in LA. And he's very, very nerdy, very techie, very smart guy. But we've done jobs together where we travel together. And he's either cam op and I'm pilot or vice versa. And we go to like check in at the airport or at the hotel. And people are so confused that his first name is my last name. Even though it's really not that complicated of a thing. They're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're which it's bizarre.
Let me tell you, nobody gets confused with Nurkkala. They're like, can you spell that for me?
Yeah, you can definitely spell it, but no one's asking you if that's your first name or your last name. Is the point that I'm making.
Definitely.
And I've got that my entire life. Like, really, what's a weirder first name, Donovan or Davis? I mean, I think people shouldn't have to ask that, but whatever. And when
Do you go by
did
Donovan?
Heller, what I went?
Do you normally go by Donovan, or do you go by like Donnie or
I
Don?
go by Donovan professionally because there's never another Donovan on a film set.
That's
So
nice.
What do you go by in the
things
bedroom?
very easy. Big Daddy usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes Poppy. That does it for me sometimes. But no, typically Donovan's the easiest because there's no other Donovans around.
That's a good name.
If I go by Don, there's always a couple on a film set, but Donovan's unique enough.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, Donovan.
My pleasure, guys.
Poppy.
The perspective that you bring from commercial drones to consumer drones to commercial and consumer drones, all the way through everything, is absolutely fascinating. There's so many cool stories that we could unfold, and I think that we're gonna have a second episode at some point in the future because there is just so much that we get to be talking about. But I want to give this opportunity to you to plug anything that you want to talk about, whether that's your own social or DJI or other products that you've been working on. But yeah.
So thank you for that. It was really a pleasure being here. I had a lot of fun. Like John, I don't have much of a personal social media presence.
Who cares, right?
Well, it's just like so much of what we do, we can't post anyway. So you just get to a point where, like you shoot something awesome and you don't get to post it. It's like, meh. But I will, like John, try to have more of a social media presence. John's, I think your Instagram handle is Johnny Drones, right? Underscore
Yep.
Johnny underscore drones.
Yeah.
So mine is Donnie Drones.
Yes.
Without the underscore.
Oh.
So we can definitely. That's all I have to plug. I'm really just here for the love of the hobby. And I will say, though, as I mentioned, I'm not here on behalf of DJI, but I will say what I said about supporting pro products is really important for our community. So myself and Stuart Cram, who's my colleague at DJI, we spend a lot of time of our personal time trying to support the Facebook groups and the other forums and answer questions. And we do a lot of support in Hollywood. And like I said, with Dexter and all of the pro guys, we do that mostly ourselves. And that's the kind of support that's going to keep pro products being made, is by people showing what they're doing with them and how well they can be used. Instagram, how you use that run into, put your drone videos on YouTube, tweet, use your social media to promote the pro products as much as you can, because that's much more important than I think people realize.
What's a good hashtag for that? I know I do like DJI Global a lot of times.
DJI Global is the ideal one. So, anything that has to do with any of our products, but in particular, like, the consumer side, they get a lot of attention. Not that I'm saying don't post your great consumer product stuff, but to really keep pro alive and to keep it innovating and to keep the support coming and the money being put towards these pro products that we all rely on and love so much, it's really important that we're representing that in social media as well.
Awesome.
That is good to know. Absolutely. Something I honestly I haven't even thought about. So yeah, I appreciate that, sharing that little knowledge source there. And I appreciate all your help you're doing to support the prosumers and the professional customers and everybody out there.
It is really my pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out tonight. It's been awesome to have Donovan hanging out and talking about all of these different aspects of consumer to prosumer to professional, all of that. Thanks, John. Thanks, Donovan. Thanks to everybody for listening, and keep flying the good flight.
Yeah.